Seymour Board of Education, and we'll call the meeting to order. It is 7:02 p.m. on Monday, November 18th. This time I'd like to remind everyone to sign in and please silence cell phones. I would like to remind visitors that in order to facilitate an effective meeting, we ask those who wish to make public comments to the board this evening to read the visitor guidelines found on the table outside the door, complete the attached orange public participation forms, and get those to Dawn. Public participation is allowed only during designated portions of the meeting. Other than those times, the meetings are not interactive with those in attendance. Thank you all for being here tonight, and could we have a roll call, please?
Giles. Keith.
Here.
Henricks. Schultz.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Hennessy.
Here.
McComb.
Here. Okay. And Hendricks will be arriving later on. Could we stand for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good. Board members, you've had an opportunity to review the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it has been presented?
So moved.
Thought we'd go home for a minute, okay. Motion to
Sorry.
do that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the agenda?
Yeah, actually, I was hoping, just based on some of the communication that I got from the community, I think number 8 and number 10, there are lots of people in the room for those parts of the discussion. I was wondering if we might be able to move those up in the agenda, just in thinking about people's time and how late they might have to be here if they're all the way down on the agenda. So I was hoping to move those to the top.
We're on deadlines with several of the earlier items, so I kind of hate to move those for those reasons. When we crafted the agenda, the stuff that has got to be dealt with tonight was pretty much moved to the front of the agenda. So I agree, it's a concern. We have lots of items.
Are we not gonna get to everything on the agenda?
I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm hoping we get to everything on the agenda.
I guess I just thought it would be courtesy to not make people wait.
I understand.
I can share this based upon the information coming out. I sent this to the board members earlier, which they may not have seen, but I took the courtesy of making a copy. And my motion would be that we table number 8 right now, and it goes back to the committee with further review and bring it back at a later date. I can share my reasoning for that now, or I can share that later, based upon where it moves.
I think that's what a lot of people in the room are here to hear about and share their feelings about.
All right, as a member of the committee, then I'll share my comments. I wrote them down so that I would have them all down. I said before commenting about this public comment, I would like to note that I am not
Just
opposed.
as a point of order, I think we have to finish
Yeah.
approving the agenda before we can move on to
Okay.
any other business.
Let's
Okay. But how does that mean that we're approving the agenda? Like if we're gonna change and maybe not move something or take it out?
we can table items as we go through.
Okay, all right.
All right.
I don't have a problem moving them up if we do. I don't know where we'll get.
So are we gonna move,
I would be in
what
favor
were
of
the two that you
8, 10 to 1 and 2.
so the,
Well, we also have a guest here who's talking about number 3.
Who's traveling?
so can we float those 3 to the
So
top?
8, 10, and 3, and then we do the rest.
Who is, our guest here is from out of town?
We have a lot of guests here tonight. So I'm
Sure.
just trying to-
But if they reside in the community, they're an active part of the meeting. I would think it'd be courteous if we're concerned about time to get the person that's from out of town up and then go.
Okay, again, the
corresponding order.
first 6 or so items, it's critical from a timing standpoint that we get through those tonight. I don't know how much discussion that's gonna entail. If we've got a commitment to move through things and accomplish the agenda, then we can move some things forward. but
I think we can.
I want Mitch to
I'll
finish
just be
it.
honest out of the gate, I'm not excited about 1 in the morning again.
Me neither.
Can we put 8 and 10 after 1, 2, and 3, kind of compromise?
That works for me.
That's fine, I just wanted to move
Sure.
them up in the agenda.
Okay, so we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then we'll move to 8 and 10.
Okay.
That's good with everybody. The motion to approve the agenda with moving 8 and 10 up to after 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Further discussion on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next is consent agenda. Consent agenda tonight includes minutes of previous meetings, the bills, the treasurer's report, and personnel changes. Is there anything tonight that you would like to move out of the consent agenda for further discussion?
I have several changes to some of the meeting minutes, so,
Which would those be?
I believe the 7th, the 15th, and the 21st.
21st open or 21st closed?
Well, I have the 16th, so I think we have to approve tonight the 16th, the 7th, and the 15th. So, I guess my motion would be to pull those and discuss those at the end of the meeting because they're just some, or we can do them now. And then I would like to table the rest of them until the next meeting because there were some inaccuracies there, but since that's not pending for
Okay.
tonight.
You lost me. I just want to know what to pull out of the consent agenda.
I pull all the meeting minutes out
Okay,
of the
we'll pull all the
agenda,
meeting minutes out of the consent agenda.
and then I move to table the 21st.
We'll do that when we get to them, if
Okay.
you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay, so we pulled all the minutes out of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda without the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Fair discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes?
Giles, Hendricks, Larson,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Okay, now let's go to the meeting minutes that we pulled out. The 16th. Is there a motion to approve the 16th?
Is your motion to move it to the end?
I was gonna move it to the end, or I can make comments now.
I think the 16th's got to be approved tonight, so we just
I know.
assume we deal with it well.
Okay, on page 5 and 6, I think it's important that on these votes 4 to 3, I'd like to call out the votes, and have a roll call vote description of how the voting went. I think that's a more accurate depiction of what actually happened in the meeting, so I think moving forward, I'd like to suggest that anytime there's a vote that's not a 7-0 vote, that we take the time to call out who voted which way.
Okay, so I'm clear, are you suggesting we do that moving forward, or are you suggesting we amend those minutes?
I'd like to amend these minutes.
Okay.
There's
While
also,
we're on that, when we adopted the press 9.b.8, there was actually a correction made. And so I wouldn't want someone to read this and then go back and think that we adopted those policies as stated because there was a correction made.
Okay, so that's
So it
correct.
needs to reflect that there was a correction made there. And then on the last
Oh, yeah,
page, there's,
You're gonna say what I'm saying.
it says the motion was not approved by yes votes 7-0.
Yeah, both of the motions
that's
under
not-
9B are not the way that it happened in the meeting. Those votes were split votes. The first motion did not carry.
and that was 4 to 3. Are you
4 to
talking
3.
about 9B15?
Correct.
That was on my list too.
Yeah, and then the second motion did carry, but it was not a 6-1 vote, it was a 4-3 vote, I believe.
No, it what? Oh, maybe.
Is that for the 20th
That
hour?
was, yes.
So, no, it wasn't, because I voted in favor of it.
No, I know, but I thought it was a 4-3
I think Merle
in
was the
favor
only
of.
one that voted no.
Okay,
I think that one is right, I think the 7-0
Oh.
is the one that's right.
okay.
Do we need to go back and listen to them, because it seems like there's some inaccuracies in what we think, and we
I think the
definitely
problem
do
is
that.
they have to be approved tonight,
The
and so that's.
16th, 7th, and October
Deadline.
15th have to be approved tonight.
We just noted the 7-0
So
for sure.
Dawn, did you get those?
No, what are the policy numbers?
9B15, which is the non-binding resolution to acknowledge the news media organizations. So it's page 6 of 6 on the 16th.
Okay.
And so that motion was not approved by a 4-3 split vote. And again, I think we need to call out how that vote.
Was there another one?
No, they're telling me I misremembered the other one, so that could be the case. I just knew it didn't.
There's also, in the motions to approve the special meeting minutes on the 5th and the 19th, it says the vote was 7-1 in the draft. So I'm
7-1
assuming,
doesn't work.
We don't
Yeah.
want to.
I'm assuming it meant 7-0.
Which ones were those?
The motion to approve the 8-5-19 and the 8-19-19 special meeting minutes.
Okay, is there anything else on the 16th of September? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes as we just amended them?
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, do we need that in a roll call vote? It was under consent agenda, so I'm assuming I did. Roll call.
Hendricks, Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Giles, Keith,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. I mean, there's no spending involved, so I'm not sure. We'll err on the side of a roll call. Minutes for October 7th,
That's a
study session, closed session.
So we need to do that in
Closed
closed,
session.
right?
Okay, so we'll move that, we'll table that to closed session. And minutes is already on the closed session agenda, so what we'll have to do is go to closed session, make those changes, and then when we come back out of closed session to open session, we will most likely, we'll take action. Okay, minutes for October 15th.
I just had a general concern and question. All of the other minutes seem to call out specific people making comments and asking questions. And this particular set of minutes doesn't do that, and I feel like we lose. At this point, not really sure what we do because we have to approve these. I don't know if we can approve them, assuming that we will go back and amend them. But I just feel like it's not an accurate reflection of the discussion and the thought processes when it just says the board, the board, the board. So,
I think we can go back and amend them after 30 days, right? Or are minutes different? We can vote on something.
So it's important to remember that there's also an audio recording and there's also a video
Exactly.
of the meetings. And I just really have to speak up for the difficulty of capturing, I'll be really honest, the minutes right now are far more detailed than the Open Meetings Act actually requires. And we're gonna be moving away from that. The amount of time that Dawn put into all of this was extraordinary. And even with the audio and video recordings, to capture the essence of the discussion is very difficult. And so it's not meant to be vague, but I think that what the Open Meetings Act actually requires is a summary of what happened. And we're way below summary in the meeting minutes. And if we're gonna continue to have this many meetings, we're gonna have to just kind of adjust and move away from the extreme detail that we have right now. And I say that, again, given that there is an audio and a video recording of our meetings, of course not a closed session video, but there is something to fall back on as well.
could we move to something like Dragon where the typing is done as part of the audio recording? That would certainly minimize the amount of typing that would be required and probably would simplify the editing process. While still, the problem is that meeting minutes are what people go back to get a sense of what happened in the meeting. And so I have some concern about not being able to accurately reflect that.
I think it depends on how you define sensitive, what happened in meetings. I also think, again, if it's an open meeting, you've got the entire thing on YouTube, you can see exactly what happened. I'm not, seem to be spending a lot of time on this, and I'm questioning how productive that is. We can keep going if that's what we need to do. So we're on October 15th.
Yes.
Open session.
The approval of the agenda, don't think there was a vote tally listed there. It's just a minor correction.
Well, but the approval of the agenda was an aye vote, like an A,
Yeah,
yea and
it's not a vote, it's not a roll call.
Sorry, never mind.
Okay. So I'm a little confused now as to where we're at on October 15th.
I don't know if we have any changes.
I mean, if our stance is that it's too difficult and overly burdensome, and we're gonna rely on the video recordings, then I guess that's one way to do it. But I guess I would need some more understanding about how that impacts the Open Meetings Act, and, you know, it's pretty specific about being able to show what happens. So I guess what I would request is that we have a discussion about meeting minutes added to an upcoming agenda where we can dive into that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
All right. So October 15th. I believe we had a motion and a second on that a while back now.
I didn't write one down.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the 15th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Is there further discussion?
Wasn't that me, right? You gave it to
We have a roll call vote on this.
Keith,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Hennessy,
No.
Hendricks, Schultz,
Abstain.
Giles, McComb.
Yes. Okay, for the 21st through the 4th, do we want to approve those now, or do we want to table those?
I'd like to table them.
Okay. Motion on the floor to table the,
Second.
is there a second, further discussion on tabling those minutes? All in favor of tabling those, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're tabled. Item 6, donations. Dr. Hall.
We have 2 donations this month. The first one is from the Rock Counseling Group to Lincoln Trail, a $100 cash donation for the Mahomet Cares Closet. And the second donation is from the Mahomet-Seymour High School Athletic Boosters, donation of $15,864 to miscellaneous sports programs at our high school. Thank you to those organizations.
Standing, Dr. Hall recommends we approve the donations as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion on the donations. Roll call vote, please.
Larson, Hendricks, Giles, Hennessy,
Yes?
Keith,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Communication time. Anyone here from the PTO tonight? MSEA. Foundation, anything from the foundation, Lori?
Yes, just a reminder that the Bulldog Bash is May 8th, and I wanted to give a shout out to our students. We had over 25% of our students were recognized this past Thursday night for academic letters, sophomore, junior, and seniors, and they have a pretty rigorous expectation for that. They have to have a 3.6 for the entire academic year on a 4-point freshman and sophomore, and a 3.8 as a junior and senior. So it was very exciting, and the foundation purchases those letters and pins for that. So I'd like to give them a shout out for that.
Tonight, for visitors, we have 5 that have filled out participation forms to speak. Somebody was running late, so we'll move that to the end. All right, First up is Mary Fortune. And just a reminder tonight that, Mary, this will not count against your time, but we are doing public participation now. We will also do a second public participation segment near the end, if people have comments that come up during the meeting. And then under regular business, after each of those items, we'll do a brief question and answer or input time on regular business items. That's something we talked about a couple months ago. We're gonna test drive that for a couple of months here and see how that goes, and then reevaluate it in 2 or 3 months. So right now, during this time, the same rules are in effect. You've got 5 minutes if you need it.
Okay,
Thank you, Mary. Sorry to
okay, good evening.
hold that.
I'm here to encourage you again to vote no on the student safety resolution that gives the Illinois Association of School Boards the authority to lobby for legislation which provides school boards the option of allowing district employees to carry firearms. At the October board meeting, in addition to a very brief discussion on this resolution, Dr. Schultz delivered an in-depth, well-researched, clearly articulated PowerPoint presentation to support her recommendation to allow homeschooled students to participate in extracurricular activities. To me, it appeared she had provided more than enough information to validate a policy revision. However, board members asked her to get yet more data. What I did not hear the board ask for was any data or research to support a yes vote on the student safety resolution. Knowing how important it is to all of you to make an informed decision, I would like to provide you with some information to help you see why supporting such a resolution might actually contribute to increased school violence rather than ensure the safety of students. There have been more than 80 publicly reported incidents of mishandled guns at schools in the last 5 years, including one teacher's loaded gun falling from his waistband while doing a cartwheel, one teacher unintentionally firing a gun in a class during a safety demonstration, students finding guns in unattended bags, bathrooms, and school gymnasiums, as well as guns that were stolen from teachers by students. Arming teachers would increase students' exposure to violence rather than decrease it. A few of the professional organizations that oppose arming teachers include the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Education Association, the Illinois Education Association, and the National Association of School Resource Officers. In fact, some of the reported mishandling of guns were incidents when an SRO's gun was accidentally fired. Some detail situations where students wrestled a gun away from an SRO. Research shows that 80% of teachers and 70% of teenagers do not want teachers to be armed. I would encourage this board to consider Mahomet teachers and students' concerns on this topic. When my kids started school in this district 20 years ago, there were no locking door policies that were followed routinely every day. I know this because I entered every single school building at one time or another through an unlocked door. Over time, this became a real concern and procedures were put in place to remedy that situation. When my kids graduated from Mahomet, there were no school resource officers in place. And now, this district does have a school resource officer. The point is, no member of this board can unequivocally say that arming teachers would never be considered if this school district, if that option were legal. We simply cannot predict the future, but we can have some say in the direction it goes. Some of you argue it's a basic principle of local control. However, guns are not a matter of education. Guns are a matter of law enforcement. Placing guns in schools only gives children greater access to guns. If this board wants to support other school districts in dealing with the obstacles they face regarding school safety, I challenge you to put forth your own resolution to the IASB. I challenge you to do your own research to find out what can help reduce tragedy at school. The United States Secret Service recently released a study finding that more than 70% of guns in school incidents could have been stopped, not with another gun, but by somebody reporting suspicious behavior. Mahomet's own Jason Seaman was able to stop a student with a gun while he was unarmed. There are solutions, non-gun solutions. Arming teachers is the easy choice, but real solutions are hard. I challenge you to find ways that support mental health, offer greater behavioral resources, and even talk with other school districts and law enforcement about ways to provide security. Ultimately, your vote on this resolution can lead to more tragedy or to evidence-based policies that will truly make schools a safe place for learning. I encourage you to follow the Champaign Unit 4 School Board's vote just last week, where they unanimously voted no on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Mary, I'd like to apologize. I thought I silenced my phone. I'm very sorry that that interrupted what you were saying.
Okay.
There are some seats if you in the doorway would like to sit down. There just happen to be in the front row.
Well, there's a couple. So,
Or in the back.
Maggie Kinnaman.
Good evening. I will use my time to briefly speak on two separate topics. The first being the same topic that Mary Fortune just spoke about. I would like to follow up on the comments I made here a few weeks ago regarding the resolution proposed by Mercer County School District 404 that will be voted on soon at the annual school board convention in Chicago. The last time I spoke, I cited some statistics and offered my opinion as a veteran public school teacher about why I think allowing teachers and school staff to carry guns in school is a terrible idea. Later that evening, some of the board members pointed out that the resolution I was speaking about would not mandate school districts to allow school personnel to carry guns, but would let each school district make that decision for themselves. I did and do know that. I understand that. But I feel that it is important to look at the big picture here. Voting in favor of this resolution would be condoning the practice of allowing school personnel to carry concealed guns. I worry that this would open a dangerous can of worms. I worry that more and more schools would gradually allow the practice until teachers carrying guns becomes the norm. When I became a teacher 28 years ago, nobody would have ever imagined that we would be considering arming teachers. I feel strongly that we need to shut this notion down. Whether our school district would ever engage in this practice or not, we need to send the message that we do not support implementing such a potentially dangerous practice that has zero research to support it and that would be effective or safe. Again, I urge the Mahomet-Seymour School Board to vote no on this resolution. The second topic I would like to speak about tonight is developing a racial equity program for Mahomet teachers and staff. In the Urbana School District 116, where I teach, we have been engaging in racial equity education and monthly discussions among staff for the past 4 years. This training is still ongoing. I have also chosen to take part in more intensive workshops through my district on this topic. I feel that this kind of program for educators is extremely valuable and necessary. Although Mahomet's population is currently 96% white, we are experiencing population growth, and with that will come more ethnic diversity. I could list for you right now numerous racially inappropriate episodes that my own 3 children have heard or witnessed at school, including racist jokes and slurs. I also have several friends whose children have been the target of blatantly racist comments or microaggressions, both at school and on the school bus. I know that the school board and the teachers in this district want to educate our students as fully and deeply as possible. I know our community takes pride in the quality of our schools. I know we want all students who attend our schools to feel welcome, safe, and included. I also know it takes deep thinking, reflecting, and years of difficult conversations to see where our own biases lie and how to confront them. I would like our district to form a racial equity team consisting of administrators, teachers, and community members to start this important work. I know that the Racial Equity Leadership Team in Urbana initially worked with a group called the National Equity Project, which provides equity-focused professional development for school districts, nonprofits, foundations, and communities. This could be a resource to use for a starting point. I hope this board and Superintendent Hall will consider forming a racial equity leadership team, and I volunteer to serve on it as a community member. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, we've got a malfunction there. Susan Jackson.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I didn't wake up this morning planning on talking here tonight, but I felt called to stand with those who live in this community and who have shared my family's experiences with race in Mahomet. My family moved to Mahomet a little over 2 years ago when my husband accepted a job at the university. We chose to live in Mahomet because of the reputation of the school system and because of the house in the neighborhood that we found met our needs. There are countless of wonderful things about this town, not the least of which being the people in it. Unfortunately, our experiences as a biracial family regarding race continually impact our feelings of safety, my children's developing racial identities, and have caused us to question whether this community has a place for us. I could share the countless things that we have experienced, but it would be too heartbreaking and take too long. Today, I want to focus my time on my belief that we have a responsibility to all children, especially white children, to address racism directly in the school system. We must prepare our children to engage in meaningful ways with a diverse world community so that they can experience the richness that exists outside of this small town. I've talked with a bunch of people since we've moved here, and some of the ideas that we discussed were starting a diversity board or a diversity team for the district, which would be so vital to unifying the district, to really developing our beliefs and values, and to create a culture of acceptance. We would also like to see resources to build staff capacity. I would love to see staff training, again, around privilege and bias. It is something that takes a lot of guidance and a lot of really deep work that is hard to do independently and would take resources to facilitate. Things like book studies and building teams would make a huge difference in starting those discussions. I believe that our individual schools need supports. We should really look at starting a secondary language class in the elementary level, and not just Spanish and French, but Mandarin and Arabic, that tells our children that it's important that they communicate with other people, that their way isn't only the right way, and we have to start that early so that they can really learn that other cultures are important. We need to ensure that history and science and literature include diverse authors and scientists and heroes, and have access to diverse books with families and authors. So since moving here, I've thought more about the importance of diversity and the impacts of racism than I ever had in my life. I know that this may not be a big part of your life, and that makes it difficult for me to convey how big a part of it is of my life and of the lives of my children. But please understand how heartbreaking it is to watch them experience racist beliefs and practices in the community that we have grown to love, especially since we can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm sorry.
Next up is Katie McHugh.
Hi there. So since last month, I did have one cataract done, so things are still messed up. So we'll see what happens here, because this one has distance, and this one seems worse than it used to be. So here we go. This is actually from my daughter Julia. She spends her Mondays at a homeschool cooperative, and then Dad picks her up, and they do math at his office, and then they have dinner, and then they go to an evening Bible study. So she couldn't come tonight, but she wrote this at his office this afternoon. So she emailed it to me and asked me to read it. So she wrote, "Dear Mahomet-Seymour School Board, my name is Julia McHugh. I am homeschooled, and I am the 4th chair French horn in the 7th grade band. I love going to band where everyone is nice to me and treats me like anyone else. I went to Middletown and Sangamon, where I made lots of friends who welcomed me back after 5 years. For as long as I can remember, I have been playing sports in the Mahomet Park District. Now I am too old to play on the teams. I played basketball and volleyball at Judah Christian School when I went there in 5th and 6th grade. I am in 7th grade now, and I am unable to participate in extracurricular activities. I have many talented homeschooled friends who would love to do things at Mahomet-Seymour. I can only participate in band because it is a class. Since I first started homeschooling, I considered myself a Mahomet-Seymour homeschool bulldog. Therefore, I urge you to please let homeschoolers participate in extracurricular activities. Thank you, Julia McHugh."
Thank you, Julia McHugh.
Thank
Julia McHugh, the deliverer.
Okay, and is Ben Chapman here? Ben, come on.
So I actually have the same sort of story. I was homeschooled here growing up, and I've heard some of the discussion that some of you have had about this. And I know that academics are an important concern you have. It's a school board that you should care about that. And you can't really evaluate whether homeschooled students are doing that well. So I thought I'd let you know, I was homeschooled from 3rd grade through high school. I partly attended Parkland College in high school. I was then accepted to the University of Illinois to study dietetics in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition. I was awarded the Jonathan Baldwin Turner Scholarship on admission, and would later be awarded 4 other scholarships along the way. Some for academics, others for civic engagement. I graduated last May, summa cum laude, or magna cum laude, excuse me, with a bachelor's and a minor in sustainability. So I hope I can stand as one more data point that shows that some homeschool students do very well academically. So in my childhood and high school, I and my siblings were serious ballet dancers. That's part of why we were homeschooled, is the schedules between those two things. It had to be very flexible. But I also played sports in Mahomet, on rec leagues when I was young, and then travel leagues when I was old enough. I played second base for the Mahomet Diamond Dogs, then switched to travel soccer, and played midfield and goalie. Each time I joined a new team, there was a predictable curiosity from my teammates of who this new kid was. They didn't know me, they didn't see me in their schools, so they wondered, what is this kid doing here? And he does ballet, that's weird for a boy. And then they saw that there was this suspicion, but they saw that thanks to my ballet training, I brought things to the team. I was able to throw my leg up above my head and knock down punts and keep the ball, on our side. I could jump just those few extra inches in baseball, and that allowed me to grab those line drives that the other team couldn't. So I started as an outsider. I started as somebody they didn't know, but over time I was instead judged on my ability to help win games, on what I brought to the team rather than where I came from. So homeschool students, we are different from public school students. We come from the outside. But I think that's a strength. The discord between the public school student and the outsiders is valuable. It's giving public school students a chance to learn about students that come from a different background, who have different beliefs, who come from different socioeconomic classes, who have different passions and different life goals. So we're different, and the unenlightened mind could see that as a reason to exclude us from participating in extracurriculars. But if you put aside preconceptions and open your eyes to the benefits of including us, you'll find the value we can bring to be worth the recognition. I say we as if I'm, myself 10 years ago. But we come from different lifestyles, different ability statuses. We have different learning styles. We bring diversity of class, creed, and color to the communities we are in. Letting more homeschoolers play on school sports is a good thing. Please support the children and the sports team of your school district and vote to expand participation in extracurriculars to homeschool students. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. thank you everyone that spoke tonight. We appreciate your comments and your thoughts. Now it's time for board communications and follow-up from building reports, and we'll start. Ken, you want to start?
Sure. So, sorry, my only communication tonight, I'm a little concerned about us hitting the next contract deadline with our administrators. I believe by March 1st, we need to meet with each individual administrator, and we've got about a dozen of them. We've only met with Dr. Rummel so far, and I want to make sure that we're going to stay on top of getting that accomplished before the March 1st deadline. That's it for me.
Mine have to do with things that were in the board packet. I was really excited to see that Middletown has a dialogue and community discussion that Mr. Day led called 315. Sounds like something fun to go to. I think it's meant to build a positive work culture, and I think that's something that we've been trying to do as a district as a whole. And then last part I have for comments was just I was excited to see in the Lincoln Trail report about the expectations that were met with positive behavior for the students. I think the students really love to get called out on things like that, and I was glad to see in the board packet. My kids are old now, so I don't have a knowledge of who the kids are, but it was fun to see the names of the kids in the classes that they were in. That's all for this evening.
Comment?
I just wanted to say that Thanksgiving is coming up, and so it's made me reflect on the things I'm thankful for. And besides the things in my life, I'm thankful for my faith and my family and my friends. I'm also grateful for a school board and a school district that works hard to provide good things for our kids. And so I'm just feeling very grateful for that.
I just want to say it's nice to see a room full of people. I appreciate all of you being here. I think it's important that for us to do our jobs well, we hear from the community. Having stood at that podium, sometimes even sitting at this table, I do recognize that getting up and saying something meaningful that's important to you is difficult, but we really appreciate, I for one appreciate you taking the time to be here, reaching out and letting us know what's important to you. And I just want you to know that we see you, and I for one see you and hear you, and thank you for your time.
The other thing I've got is just a reminder to board members. Several of us are going up to the joint conference in Chicago later this week. If you're going up on Thursday night, one of the huge benefits of that is Friday there are some pre-conference workshops. They are additional to sign up for. And if, I think I'm the one so far that signed up for them. Typically we've got several board members that do pick something and attend it. And I think there's still space in these. So I'm going to send one this way and two this way just to let you know. If you see something there you'd like to attend on Friday, there's not a lot else going on, particularly Friday morning. Even if you just want to do a half-day session, let Dawn know when she can get that booked for you, or they are going to allow on-site registration if they still have openings. A lot of times in the real popular ones they don't. But I think in the next day or two, Dawn can get you in if you need to go in. And that is all I've got. Next up was financial update. Trent.
All right, tonight's update will be a quick reflection on copier costs. Sorry for the boring topic ahead of time.
Sure.
Oh, I'm honored that everybody came to hear me talk about copier costs. So specifically with overage costs, a couple years ago we discussed this topic, and that kind of became the catalyst for us wanting to bid the copier contract out. We were spending on average about $22,000 annually in overages on our previous contract. So we put that out to bid between March and June 2017. New contract started in July of 2018. So since then, I'm happy to report that in FY18, our overage costs decreased down to $3,590. And then this past fiscal year, it decreased even lower to $836. So coming from almost $21,500 annually, we're saving some money. And I kind of went back and looked at the presentation from the last contract, and I'm going to put Jared Lynn on the spot here, but reading straight from the presentation, Jared's determined to properly manage the fleet using the fleet management software PaperCut, establish quotas, and print redirection. This will reduce, if not eliminate, the possibility of being billed for overages. So I wanted to give Jared credit where credit is due, but also give huge amounts of credit to all of our staff who changed their copying behaviors and worked with us on working within those allotments. So all staff in the audience, I appreciate that. Of course, savings, any kind we can find is helpful. So that's really all I had. Any questions on the copying savings? We're heading the right direction for sure. This year we'll shoot for no overage costs. So we're getting there. Thank you.
Superintendent report, Dr. Hall.
Thank you. I just had one main thing, and that was just to acknowledge and thank our board members. November 15th in Illinois is Board Member Day in our state, and I think that until you're on the board, that you really have a full realization of the amount of time and effort and commitment that it takes. It's a lot more than probably what people know until you're actually sitting up there. So I just want to thank all of you, including our two members who aren't here tonight, Dr. Henricks and Mr. Giles. But just thank you for your dedication and commitment and time. You are not getting paid, despite a resolution proposal to pay board members, which is probably not going to happen, but your time is very much appreciated, and I just want to say thank you for that and acknowledge your work on behalf of the families here in Mahomet-Seymour. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Okay, now we're into regular business. There's nothing under unfinished business. Under new business, first up is Dr. Rummel, new course at the high school.
All right, thank you. So we have been through the process with two courses we'd like to bring to you that would go into effect for next school year. The first course would be an AP Computer Science Principles course. This is a year-long course, an introduction to computer science. We would like to start by offering it to 10th through 12th graders, with priority being given to seniors and moving our way down as space allows in the new course. One of the things that's very compelling about this class is that there is not a prerequisite other than Algebra 1 or concurrent enrollment in Algebra 1B. So it's accessible to a lot of our students. So this course, because it is an AP course, the state of Illinois requires that it comes with math credit, so it will run through our math department for high school credit. But we would still, when talking and counseling students, even though they'll receive math credit, we would still encourage them. They're going to be going still through the regular sequence of math courses in terms of progression through that with the algebra, geometry, algebra 2. One of the things I'd like to point out with our computer science class that's very unique, so as you know, currently in the state of Illinois, you cannot graduate from college as a computer science teacher. So you have to graduate certified to teach in another area, and then you can get a secondary endorsement in computer science through Illinois State University right now, but you can't come out of college and be a computer science teacher. So most of our math teachers, when they graduate with their degree in math or math and science, have a computer science course under their belt. So we are very fortunate. Bob Knight is here tonight. Microsoft offers a program through TEALS where computer scientists are trained to work with teachers and support students in the classroom in computer science. And even though Microsoft is not partnering in the state of Illinois, somehow our parent got in and was able to be trained and has completed that training and is willing to support us as we get this computer science class up and running, to support our staff in making this opportunity available to our students. If you recall, 2 years ago, we surveyed our high school students asking what courses they were looking for. One of those courses was physics. We were able to offer that introductory physics course this year. Another area that students were interested in was computer science. We'd really like to be able to offer that to our students moving ahead. Do you have any questions?
Do you know who the teacher will be?
I've been working with Dan Ryan in the math department, so we will assign that course.
Okay.
So that has not been determined yet.
This AP credit, have the counselors looked into which post-secondary programs or certificates will accept that credit towards their degree or their certificate or
Because
whatever?
so that differs by university.
Right.
So we looked up for example, U of I, you'll get, I can't remember which course it covers, you have to score 4 or 5. It's different at ISU, it's different everywhere.
Okay.
Just like any AP course. So some universities you go into, you would get elective credit for it, others you would get like a computer science 101 type of credit for it.
Can I repeat that? So what you're saying is that not all the universities have the same expectation for what they'll get. Okay, thank you.
And it can also vary depending on what your major is.
Okay.
As to what credit you receive for that. So this would be the first course, and then hopefully next year we'll be coming back then with making a recommendation to begin offering computer science A, which is another course, which is heavier in programming. So the other course we're looking to offer tonight is lifelong wellness with fitness and food. And so Kristen Allen and Eric Pike here, those would be the 2 teachers for this course. This would be somewhat of a co-taught course. Students would spend 2 days with one teacher, 2 days with the other teacher, and then the 5th day would be combined. So we will be meeting the requirements the state puts forth for PE. One thing that I really do want to point out is, food science, is that what we currently call it? The food science, yeah. That course, the enrollment has steadily declined over the past several years. And this is a way to take some of that curriculum and make it more applicable to students. So how can we really focus on not only how do we take care of our body, but what is the impact of the foods that we put into our body? How does that impact how we take care of our body as well? So we're real excited to be offering this course. This course will be also available for 10th through 12th graders. Again, it would be a course that seniors would be given priority and way down. During one of our curriculum meetings, teachers were asking, is this a course that students would be able to take multiple times? And no, there's other PE offerings that they would be able to take, but this would be just like other courses, a one-time.
One time, 1 year though, right?
It's a semester course.
A semester, okay.
Mm-hmm. So they would be able to take it once during their 4 years. So questions on that course?
So it sounds like our staffing is going to remain the same, but are there any other costs that we need to budget for either one of these courses?
No.
Equipment or textbooks or anything like that?
That's a great, I am going to be writing a foundation grant just for some things for the computer science course that would be nice to have. They won't be required to run it. The computer science course, the principles course, is not a heavy programming course, so that everything can be done on the Chromebooks. It's not going to require any extra technology in that way. And I've talked to Mr. Ryan. The math department can absorb this course, and we've already looked at CTE and PE, and we will be able to fit this in.
Great.
Will it be taught in a regular classroom? Like a regular classroom? I'm just curious.
So,
Or do you know?
yeah, it'll be both. So half of the students, the total students, would be with still like me Monday and Tuesday in PE, where we can access the aerobics room, the weight room, the main gym, field house, and do our physical movement lesson that corresponds with Erica's, where she has the other half on Monday and Tuesday in the food lab. And so she would be cooking, for instance, one lab would be, the correct meal for pre-interval workout, and her students would be cooking it, my students would be doing the interval, and maybe potentially eating that food, and then the Wednesday, Thursday, we would switch, and the other half would get the same lesson, so they'd be with me, it would be with her, and then Friday we would combine and probably be in the gym for the 3rd PE day, but all total students together.
Thank you.
So this is a question that probably is better suited for you. Have you had any issues in the past with students concerned about their personal attributes being shared with classmates? I'm talking about things like weight and other body size issues. Has there ever been any concern with students being concerned that, you know, my friends are gonna see how much I weigh this week and then I've gained a little weight and anything like that? And how do you manage that? You don't do anything like that? Okay. So, but with the monitoring watches, is there any?
Heart rate, yeah.
It's just heart rate? Oh, okay.
And then they would have an individual app that we don't even use right now, but we have, that came with the Polar, that this class would provide that ability, and then it would be individual on their own personal device that only they can access.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for Dr. Romo? Superintendent recommends that we approve the 2 new courses as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
Are we on?
We will.
Okay, sorry.
Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion from the board? Okay, at this point, we've allotted up to 5 minutes if we have 5 minutes worth of stuff. If anyone who is here tonight from the audience has a question or a comment on this, you've got a minute where you could share that or ask that question, and we would do that by raising of your hand, and I would call on you. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment on the 2 new classes? Yes.
They're talking about putting an app on a personal device, which I'm assuming is a cell phone. What if children do not have access to a cell phone or are grounded from a cell phone? Could they still participate in that class? If they don't have a personal cell phone? Because a lot of kids don't have cell phones or are grounded from them.
Yes, absolutely. Chromebooks. It's a web service too.
Good. Other questions or comments? Yes.
I'm curious what the app is or the website that.
Oh, it's Polar Go Fit, which we already utilize at the high school.
I'm sorry, Polar Go Fit
And then
Polar.
Polar, P-O-L-A-R, go fit.
Polar Go Fit. Oh, thank you.
You won't find that one on my phone either. I probably should. Anything else? Questions? Okay, thank you. Can we have a roll call vote on this?
Hennessy? Yes.
Sorry, you gotta stop the clock.
That's okay.
Give you more to do.
That's all right. Schultz?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Giles? Henricks? Larson?
Yes.
McComb?
Yes. And Dr. Roll, you're still up with competency-based pilot.
Thank you. So we're currently under the competency-based pilot with Ready School. What I'm requesting here is another request to go back to the state and more individualize our request as a school. The high school has recently discussed some different programming, different options that they would like to explore with regards to better meeting student needs. But before we go and start talking about what some of that programming might look like, we need to go to the state and request a waiver from the 4 school codes that are listed there. It would be daily PE, years of study in respective areas, 5 clock hours of seat time, and 176 calendar days. So without those waivers, our discussion, there's really no point in having the discussion about possibility of different programming. All this does is allow us to get the waiver and to begin discussions about what we would like some different possibilities to offer for high school students. So some of that could be apprenticeships. It could be demonstrating mastery through capstone projects. We're just not that far yet because we need the waivers before we begin exploring.
So you're asking us to approve the waiver?
I'm asking you to allow us to request the waiver from IASB. Yes.
We don't approve the waiver, we approve what you're requesting.
You approve the request.
And then if we approve the request,
Yeah.
you will go back and look at how to create a program that meets the needs of those students that typically would go there, or?
This would be separate from Ready.
Right.
This would be for the high school. We have a team at the high school that's met a couple of times. That includes CTE teachers, it includes content area teachers, instructional coaches, guidance counselors. And what we're looking at is we have various pockets of students that struggle with our current academic setup, our current school schedule, day, calendar. And we'd like to begin exploring options to help those students be successful.
Other questions from the board for Dr. Roman? Actually, before we do that, Superintendent has recommended we approve the request for the competency-based pilot. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. All right, further discussion or questions from the board?
Sorry, I went through that.
So I just wanna be clear, all you're asking for is to ask for the waivers, you're not asking for any particular program, or are you asking for the waivers and a program?
We are not asking for a program at this time. We're asking for the waivers because without the waivers, there's no point in even planning.
Okay, that's great.
Is it possible to develop a program with only some of the waivers in place? If the board wanted to not move forward with one or two?
I would take that back to the teachers.
So, I mean, I'm concerned about the daily PE waiver. I think PE has an incredible mental health, physical health benefit for our students. I'm concerned about us not continuing on with a daily PE.
So like at Ready and other places like that, they do it through a fitness log. We have the polar watches. We have ways to encourage and promote fitness without them sitting in a PE class.
And this would just be, if we were to develop these programs, this would be for specific targeted students.
Correct. It would not be for the entire population.
Right.
So you're just asking to ask for the waiver, not necessarily that we're getting rid of PE for anyone, we come back,
And we
right?
don't even
So
have to
if they
use
ask-
the waiver.
Right, if you ask for the waiver, you don't have to use it, but
Correct.
you might as well ask all at
Correct.
one time, right? I mean,
Any other questions for Dr. Roman? Okay, those in the room. Any questions, comments on this? Yes, in the back. I see a hand, I can't see a face, yes.
Hi, so how would this program be different than one in the CARES building?
Then all TED.
And the one.
Sure. So I just want to be really clear. Different teachers have come to me with different ideas of ways that they think we could meet the needs of students. We have not created a program. We have no ideas solidified right now. So what the request for the waivers would allow us to say that there are other ways that students can demonstrate mastery other than possibly sitting in the class for a certain number of hours and taking an end of course exam. And so what we'd like to explore are how we could set up programs to allow students other ways to demonstrate mastery of content and to demonstrate that they've met our graduation requirements.
This would be for students that are in the building though, right? This
It would
not
be for our students,
for
correct.
all
And it could also be for kids at the other end of, not kids that just struggle, but maybe kids that are able to excel very rapidly through our curriculum and material as well. But we really have not even begun to put down what that would look like, what those capstone projects would look like. We've read through probably, maybe 11 or 12 other high school unit districts through their applications and the different programs that they use. But we haven't finalized what it would look like or what we would want to do here for us.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure if that answered mine, but.
So it would be different than
So
all dead.
So it would be different than all dead, and what I read in the work packet seemed pretty thought out, it wasn't.
It's,
I think the waivers are thought out, I don't know.
all I submitted in the board packet was that a competency-based model that students demonstrate content mastery in ways that are different from traditional high school path. We'd like to explore what competency-based instruction would look like for us, and in doing so, requesting those 4 waivers.
Any other, yes?
So I'm wondering if this would largely impact students with behavioral differences, students that might be on homebound or have mental health issues. And then would these waivers exempt them from receiving these, like receiving, a gym type of a program where they might learn healthy ways of eating or healthy habits? Is that a waiver would then say you don't have to do that?
It's saying that they could demonstrate mastery in another way. So it doesn't take away any of the graduation requirements, it allows them to demonstrate it in a different way. So if they're at a manual labor job where they're working every day, they're demonstrating physical fitness. They may, maybe they go to a gym and they work out and they prefer a one-on-one program instead of being in a class with 30 kids. They're still able to demonstrate fitness and mastery of that content. Some of there are options where we might be able to explore further with our blended learning model and allow kids to do a combination of small group instruction and online learning. There are a lot of different options that we can look at.
The goal is to look for other ways to help them.
To help kids succeed.
To succeed, not to get them out of things for lack of a better.
No.
Yes.
So we say mastery, mastery of the content. I mean, another way for them to.
So they could have a performance assessment.
So they can meet the graduation requirements without bringing down test scores.
Right, so no, it has nothing to do with test scores. So what we're saying is if I'm a kid and I can demonstrate that I understand the content in biology through a conversation or through a model or through some other way other than an exam, then maybe we allow other ways for kids to demonstrate mastery.
Okay, this will be the last question because of time. Go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering, how would that affect their GPA as far as, the.
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't gotten that far yet. We're simply trying to get the waiver so we can begin to plan. But yeah, that's something that's gonna have to be worked out.
Okay, thank you everybody who contributed to that. Board members, any other questions that you have?
Just quickly, so assuming we get the waivers, what's your next step for coming back and reporting the next steps we'll be taking?
Yeah, so we have, like I said, we have a group of teachers. So my next step would be going to the teachers and saying, okay, we have the waivers. Let's begin to brainstorm what is the end product? What is it that we want it to look like at the end? And then we'd have to backwards map kind of programming, and then we can provide an update for you with what they feel like these are kind of the avenues that we would like to offer to kids based on this.
And assuming we get the waivers, what's your target for a rollout of something like this?
Depends on how big the project is.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a new course, it could be not next year because new courses are out, but it could be the following year. But if it's something pretty elaborate, it could be a 3 to 5 year to get it in place.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, Dawn, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Hendricks, Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Giles, Keefe,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Next item, financing proposals, Trent.
All right, let's share the screen here. All right, so at the last month's regular board meeting, the board decided to proceed with bidding out specific projects that we have discussed previously at facilities committee meetings and also in that regular board meeting in October. We're now going to, I guess leading up to that bid opening in early February, we need to start talking about what that budget will be. You know, what is the full scope of that project next summer. We have some funds internally from existing fund balance in the Capital Projects Fund. But we are, eventually I'll also introduce Kevin Hyde from Stiefel here in a minute. But first I'll run through the facilities projects like we discussed last month. And then we'll kind of get into the financing part of this. So a big part of the projects we're looking at will be the field house, floor, curtains, kind of has the whole list there. These are estimated costs for all of these projects. For the field house, if you recall, back in spring of 2019, we did bid out a fair amount of these projects. So some of these costs are bid. Now, of course, we will bid those again, and BLDD is in the process of completing that process. But we are looking at a collection of locker rooms in the field house, the team locker rooms, and also the PE locker rooms. Kind of a revamp of all of those, along with, as we discussed in the facilities committee, walk through the high school office secured entry. So kind of revamping, reformatting how students check in, how visitors check in, as well as the high school office conference room, moving some offices around to kind of be more efficient with how that's set up, carpet replacement, of course, and then those who were in the walkthrough, if you recall, we walked through the industrial arts equipment, or the industrial arts classroom, to view the equipment that would need replaced. And I guess it's important to note that middle column. Some of these will be bid, some of these projects will be bid. Other projects are health, life, safety eligible. In fact, the fresh air intake, since we previously bid that, BLDD, Damon Schlitt from BLDD had already applied to the state for us to use health, life, safety funds for that. So that is locked in. We would then, with the industrial arts space, apply to use health, life, safety funds for that as well. And I'd note too that some of these projects are below 50,000, so those wouldn't need formally bid. Of course, we would get quotes. It's just a different process. We're always looking to get competitive quotes with those projects less than 50,000. So, looking at a total of just north of 1.3 million.
I tried the industrial arts, that's actually 2 projects, right?
Yeah, so that's the replacing the paint booth. And
so we bid those separately.
Namely the exhaust, correct. Yeah, it's specialized equipment, so it kind of falls under that exemption. Right. Along with the dust collection system, also needs replaced.
So the 49,000 gets us real close to 50, but
right, it's 2
break
separate.
that into 2 parts.
Yep.
And then there's 2 projects.
Okay, Max.
Thanks.
So then that kind of leads into the financing bit. Existing fund balance, we actually have $600,000 available to us this coming summer. But as I discussed with Kevin, and we'll look at the financing options here in a minute, we want to dedicate $250 of that to the first year's payment. That would be within this fiscal year, in the interest of paying that down aggressively. You'll also see that we have short repayment schedules on the debt certificates that Kevin will now present. So I present Kevin Hyde from Stiefel Nicholas. We've worked with Stiefel since hopefully.
And to be clear, this is for information, right? We're not
correct. Yeah, no action. This is just to discuss. And
Kevin, thanks for being here.
thank you, Max.
So in working with Trent and trying to come up with some ideas for perhaps financing a project like this, it's a fairly short project in terms of the length of time to refinance. You're looking at, 5 years at the max. Obviously, more aggressive schedules would be 3 years and 4 years. And it's one of those projects that, given the size and the length, is very attractive to be purchased by commercial banks and held. Not something we as a firm would underwrite and sell out into the general public, because of the cost to underwrite in terms of rating, disclosure work. It just doesn't make it up. You can't make that up in that short period of time. Again, so we've got some numbers there that we have put together kind of as estimates for repaying that. Again, the 3-year kind of aggressive schedule, as Trent said, using $250 right off the bat this fiscal year, and then $400,000 for the next 2 fiscal years, and knocking it out very fast. The third one, the 4th year, is basically, again, that same $250, $400, and then kind of splitting up the balance over the next 2 years to give yourself a little more wiggle room for projects that might, year to year might want to finance on a cash basis. And the third option was just a 5-year level repayment type of structure. Again, the way we would propose handling this is as we call a debt certificate, which is basically just an installment contract purchase. Again, we would bid this out to banks. We won't know what the rates actually are until we get the bids, but right now the rates are very, very low.
What would we expect?
Well, I think we've got numbers at about 2.5%. I think that's a little bit hopefully conservative at this point, but they're down at the bottom of the table there, 2.3 to 2.45%. I can tell you I just bid $520,000 project up in Paw Paw, Illinois, that was a 7-year project that came in at a 195.
Wow.
So, it just depends on how aggressive the banks want to be. So, we will see probably, I would expect at least 5 bids on something like this from area banks, and some will probably be more aggressive than others. I would expect to see a spread of at least 0.5% or more, just based on where they are in their finances and how aggressive they want to be. But again, I think that's the most cost-effective way to finance something like this. It has a much smaller issuance costs involved because of the fact that we're not going out there in the public market. And again, with the interest rates that low, we couldn't begin to make up the added issuance costs of a public sale for something like that. It goes very quickly. Debt certificates don't require any notice times. They don't require any public hearings. It's just a simple action of the board. The board can tell us 1 month they want to proceed, and the next month they can adopt the resolution, and money's in the bank in a couple weeks. So it is a very quick turnaround for a project like this as well. So you could easily have your financing in place before you start the work this coming summer.
Kevin, can you back up a little bit to the top of that page? Okay. Since we're talking about real quick payback, we're talking about a real low rate. Would it be, and I'm not saying we should do this, but would it be possible under the same programming to do $1.6 million over 5 years that would still keep the payback pretty short?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have any problem doing.
Trent knows where I came up with $600,000.
I don't have any problem doing debt certificates that are up 7 years and less, up to $4 or $5 million.
We don't need to do that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, there's a market for that. There's a strong bank market for that.
Trying to figure out for a couple of years how to get tennis courts.
That's been the placeholder for tennis.
There's a strong bank market for that kind of stuff that would be attractive, and I'm sure, yeah.
Don't go run that yet, I'm just thinking.
No, I'm just telling you, it's definitely a possibility. We can explore numbers later if you want us to, but yeah, there's plenty of room on the upside if that's what the board decides they want to do.
What is the maximum amount that our board could borrow, our district?
I think I have that here.
I don't think we want to know, Kelly.
I'm going to go ahead and add at this point that these payments are made through the 1% sales tax, not paid by property taxes. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, these don't even count toward our debt limit because they're backed by it.
They do count against your debt limit.
These do, okay.
These do, yeah. All of them don't, but those are a longer time period.
Oh, right.
I actually did not print the debt limit
That's okay.
calculation
It's okay.
tonight.
I was just.
I brought other stuff, but I didn't bring that.
If you could you send that to us after?
Yeah.
Sure, I can provide that to Trent.
That'd be great.
He can make that
It
available.
would be good, though.
Yeah, we have that in our files.
Is that number on the annual statement of affairs? I just completed that.
It is, but it's oftentimes not accurate, the one the auditor does.
Will we see you later this week?
Yes, yes.
There you go.
I could even give it to Trent over in Chicago if he stops by the booth. I'll have it ready.
You're gifted the III conference.
I've been trying to
Stop
come
by our
by
booth.
for you to do the next, 48 hours.
Get a free pair of work gloves and you break out of your debt. No.
Sold.
But yeah, we can provide that.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
So with the 1% sales tax, capital projects fund overall, for the next several years, we have about $625,000 to use, I guess for summer projects, we would consider that the project money. So like I said, with the 600,000, 250 of that in these scenarios going toward the payment, the other 350 just there to pay upfront bills for the construction. So the future payments would come off of the future years, 600 to 625,000. That's the, I guess, the sacrifice if you want to look at it that way.
Big projects that we've got out there that we fund on summers, how are we doing on parking lots and roofs?
Right, so Steve and I are in the process of, mostly Steve, in the process of putting together that plan to kind of protect that parking lot investment with this building and others.
We don't want to cut ourselves to the point where we can't take care of that stuff.
Of course, roofs, we'll continue to look at those through that roof study. We have a separate amount of money assigned to maintaining those roofs moving forward.
So that's not out of that 600?
Correct, yep.
That 600 is each year?
Each year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the roofs would come from the Health Life Safety Fund. Now, we would sacrifice a little bit of that if we look to do the Health Life Safety identifier eligible, the fresh air intake in the field house and the industrial arts. That possibly, $82,000 or so to come off of what we'd otherwise spend on roofs next summer. But we're at a good point with the roofs. I think Damien explained that at the last meeting. We've done a lot of the worst of the repairs, or the worst sections of the roofs. Now it's more of a maintaining cycle.
So the 600 we have now is for this summer's work. A lot of this was planned for last summer, but the board decided not to move forward with it. Have we used the 600 from last summer?
We didn't have 600 last summer. We were going to be financing the entire amount.
I see. Okay.
Up to $1 million, I think, is what the board identified.
So we're actually.
So actually, by putting it off, we've got a little bit more of our money. The goal tonight was just to show some different options. It's gonna be moving ahead, probably December, and gonna have to narrow down or discuss what needs to be done. This is the complete list, and then decide if these scenarios fit an option that the board wants to explore.
Kevin, can we restructure any of our other debt to around 2% or less?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I like that
nothing is
number.
approaching a call date yet, so
Okay.
you can do that. But we do keep an eye on that very
I know
closely,
you
and
do.
we would let you know as soon as there was a possibility, but
2% is a great number.
yeah.
Mr. Hensley, we have, we're doing girls tennis right now?
Correct.
How close are we on boys tennis?
Ideally, I think it would be in our best interest to probably start that program a year before we were looking at building courts so that it was up and running.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Any other questions?
So I think we do have a general obligation bond that's callable in June for about $2 million. Could
What
we?
series is that?
The 2010 series?
That's the first alternate revenue source fund.
Yeah. Could we save some money there?
It's potential. I will look at it and have numbers for you in Chicago. It's not probably a lot, but we'd like to say an IGFOA and government finance officers say if you don't have at least a 3% present value savings, you shouldn't be doing it because it's the costs involved and stuff.
And it looks like the differential would be about 2%, so.
Yeah,
There you go.
We'll run the numbers and
Thanks.
have it available.
We're soon to the point where people want to pay us to borrow money.
I'm not sure that would be a good.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
So Trent, again, we're looking to go out for bid in January and have a
Right.
bid opening in February.
Correct. Yeah, early February. So
So whatever we do, we're looking at late winter, early spring.
But of course, these are bid figures from last spring. They could possibly come in much better than this season. So we can keep crossing our fingers.
That'd be awesome. That
It's
and
a
wait
better-
it and save money.
Yeah, it's
One
a
of the
better
problems-
window this time.
Before we get too excited, contractors are bringing champagne.
Great.
Yeah, I've got a project east of, or west of here that's had problems just getting
Yeah, there's a lot
bids
going
because
on
the
in
labor
Champaign
supply
County as far
is
as
just
big
not
scale
there, and
projects right
it's being bled off by Champaign, what's going on in Champaign.
Although this is not a huge scale project. All right. Any other questions for Kevin while he's here?
Thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
Kevin.
Thank you for
pleasure.
sharing.
Look forward to seeing you folks in Chicago.
All right, that was item number 3. So now we're gonna change the order slightly, but before we do that, we're gonna do a 5-minute comfort break because that's become important. So we'll do a 5-minute recess and then we'll reconvene and we're going to item 8 next. I couldn't go 2 hours.
I see that you wanted one of my hard candies. I sit there not long. Remember when you were born?
Oh, Thank you. I was jumping and I popped my knee.
I Age of wait.
Oh, yeah, she said it. At first she said it. And I'm like, I'm sorry you're not. Right? Yeah. You don't look close. The Tennessee already got you there. You know, right? You've already sort of got your mind in that.
All right, if you can quiet the room, please. Thank you so much. All right. Let the record reflect that it is 8:34, and we're back from recess. And we're at the fourth agenda item, which we moved item number 8 to the number 4 spot. So this is proposed board policy 740, which deals with homeschooling. And Colleen.
Okay. So, Ken is gonna put the policy up for us since I forgot my computer, like, great. So, we had this policy last month, and we'd gone to the policy committee and they'd asked for a bunch of data, and I brought it last month. And I am a data person. I teach statistics, I teach law, I teach economics, I love data, so I was really happy to bring that last month. And I think general data gives us some ideas of things like how, just broad overviews. But I don't think individual data in this case matters as much because it's what we want for our own community. So what other communities do isn't necessarily as important to us as what we want to do for our own community. So thank you, Ken. So he put up the policy that we have proposed. For me, this boils down to doing what's right for our community. We as a school district are funded by taxes in order that we might better our community and that we might do things to help the kids in our community become productive citizens and grown-ups. And because we have extracurricular activities, when we have class sizes we wish were smaller, and when we have buildings we wish were bigger, and yet we dedicate money to extracurricular activities, it shows us that we understand fundamentally that there's a value to extracurricular activities. There are things there, intangible lessons that can't be learned in a classroom that make our children in our community better citizens. And so I believe that we should open that to all of the children in our community so that they can learn and become better citizens as well. And so that is why we have proposed this. Whenever we make a policy, it's not really the board's job for us to decide all the implementation of the policy. In general, we just need to make sure that the implementation will be reasonable and can be done. And so last time Myrtle had asked me to find a little bit more information about how this has been implemented to make sure that implementing this would not be unduly burdensome. Although of course it would have some burden, as everything we do does. So I have a letter here I'm going to read from a kid that wrote this in a minute. But so I talked to some principals of schools and asked how they had handled this in order to see, if it was a reasonable way for us to be able to handle the implementation of this policy. And I found out that that some schools will have the homeschool family meet with the principal, a meeting that lasts about half an hour. They introduce themselves, they look over the curriculum, they talk to the parent about what they need to do in order for their son or daughter to play, and they actually described the encounter as it was very pleasant, right? Just this getting to know you and sort of looking over the process. I actually asked someone I know whose child played to write for me what their story is, like what they had to do in order to get their kid to play. And she said our twin boys played summer baseball from t-ball until high school. During their freshman year, we made an appointment with the principal to meet and look at our homeschool curriculum. The appointment only took about a half an hour, and it was so nice to have an opportunity to visit with the principal and also for him to get to know us. At this meeting, a plan was laid out to submit our grades each Thursday during baseball season. Each subsequent year, we submitted a transcript at the beginning of the season, and grades were emailed to the office weekly. Those years playing for our local school were such a fun blessing for our boys. The last day of their senior year, they went in to thank the athletic director for the opportunity to play for the school, and he expressed that he was very glad the school allowed our boys to play, and that it only positively affected the athletic program. And so I think there is a way for us to administer this that's not unduly burdensome. Obviously, we can do whatever we want, but I think it's very doable and would be very beneficial to our students. And so I make a motion that we accept this revision of policy 740.
Motion taken to accept the revision, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
I have a discussion. If you were here from the beginning, my name is Lori Larson. If you don't know who I am, I have worked in public education for 22 years, and I still do. And so I have been on the policy committee for the last 2.5 years. And so my comments I'm going to read just kind of have to do with my recommendations for where we go with this after getting the information from the committee, hearing stuff last meeting, and then thinking more about it. I would like to again note that I am not opposed to the idea of allowing homeschool students to participate in extracurricular activities. However, before we do that, I feel that it is imperative that we have a policy in place that ensures that we are doing it in a fashion that is compliant with the applicable rules and regulations, which I have here with me. I did take the courtesy to print this out and give to the board members and sent them in an email this afternoon. Because the packet was rather long, I wasn't able to look at it until this morning and look at some content. My questions to be followed are: what administration and staff in the district has this proposed change been discussed with? Has this been discussed with the superintendent? I do understand that. The high school principal and AD. How about the junior high principal and AD? How about elementary school principals? It specifically says, in order to allow participation in IHSA athletics, this comes from the policy, press policy, a student must attend a member school and may only represent in interscholastic competition the member school the student attends. For purposes of this by law, the term attend shall mean that the student is enrolled at the member school and is taking at or under arrangements approved by this member school a minimum of 25 credit hours of work for which credit toward high school graduation will be granted by the member school upon the students completing and passing the courses. The school which enrolls a student shall be exclusively responsible to verify the student's compliance with all of the eligibility requirements of all IHSA bylaws. I would like to know who's going to be responsible for evaluating the homeschool curriculum. Has this been proposed, change been discussed? And then do they agree that the addition of evaluating, you referred previously to 5 to 7 sets of curriculum, should that not be substantial? Do we understand what the language for which credit toward high school graduation will be granted by the member school? Are there legal implications? Because this has not been run through our law, and we do have a lawyer that advises us on policies. Are there legal implications for the district agreeing to this language and agreeing to grant credit? Has this language been reviewed with legal counsel with the implications of these changes fully understood? Are the systems in place presently to start this should the policy be passed this evening? Has the administration and staff asked how they will implement this policy, and how long would it take you to do this? I am assuming these students will need to be entered into our system, including the tracking of grades and confirmation. And a good point was made at the last meeting by a parent who had enrolled and said, I get other exposure, so I understand that. Why was the language for at least one course during the regular school term used in this policy? The press policy and the policies for Charleston, Lincoln, and Mattoon, which are all in our Apollo conference, read for at least 1/2 of the regular school day. Why are we not using that same language? I do understand that we can customize it to meet our needs. There is a local school, they are not in our conference, but they are less than an hour away from here, who has adopted a policy, has the policy into place and procedure. Again, I'm not opposed to this, but it was presented in September 30th. I don't see the expediency to go tonight. We can plan all of this and we can look at something forward. I know it's probably come up before in my 2.5 years I've been on the board. It has not come up. I'm an advocate for all students. I'm a school social worker, and I consider myself to be an advocate. But I'm also on the policy committee, and we've talked about doing things right moving forward. I think that for me, I cannot vote yes for this because I don't have enough information to make an educated decision. So those are my comments.
I know Dr. Hall has recommended we do not approve. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, and I just want to echo that my recommendation to not approve this policy tonight is not in opposition to the idea. It's because there's a whole lot of questions that haven't been answered, and I think, I don't want to misinterpret what you said, Colleen, but I think I heard you say we should pass the policy and then we'll figure out all the administrative procedures afterwards. We can do that. I'm not particularly comfortable with that. I think there's just some questions out there that, and at the top of the list is when does this start? If it's passed tonight, when does it start?
I think right away.
Okay.
See, I've got a concern there. I am not, like Lori, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. But I'd feel much more comfortable if we were starting at the beginning of the school year.
And this
Especially since we've admitted that we don't have it all figured out yet.
And this has been massaged more out of committee, you know, and kind of got its way up here, but it kind of wasn't in the solidified process to be out there. Because it's changed, it's evolved from the first comment that when we had the first PowerPoint, this isn't the same PowerPoint as the first PowerPoint that you handed out well, you didn't hand out the night that you presented it, we didn't have it to look at it. Because I want to make sure that we do it right. I want to service the students right. I don't want to start something and look like, gee, we don't know what to do and you're coming tomorrow to sign up for the play or sign up for sports or that kind of thing.
Has the policy proposal changed since September?
The exact same policy, September.
It's not the same PowerPoint, so.
One concern I've got is,
Which we just got this information in our packet on Thursday, right?
this
Exact policy has been the policy you've had since September 9th. Nothing has changed at all.
that slide just came today, but it's the same as we've had since.
This is the same slide we had last month.
Yeah, but you didn't have it passed out last month. When you brought it to the meeting, you presented the PowerPoint over there, you went through everything, and I asked for that information, okay? So I'm a member of a committee, may I finish, please? I just want to make what's in the best interest. And it would be like if you're going to tell me tomorrow you're gonna move, get ready to go. You haven't arranged a moving truck, you haven't arranged movers, you're ready to go. That's my concern. Again, I say, I'm not opposed to having it become policy, I just want to have the details figured out. You don't hire a new teacher and not have the description ready for them. They know what's expected of them in advance. I want
We
to
do hire first grade teachers on Monday and tell them your class starts on Friday.
We have a job description for them that they know.
Yes.
Dr. Hall, do you have anything else?
Colleen, can you just speak a little bit more to, I guess, the idea of being enrolled in one course?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really
Sorry.
discussed that in depth, or just what that looks like, or how.
So the reason
Is
that
that at our discretion, or do
It's
parents come in
completely
and-
at our, no, I mean, so I tried to pick a middle ground policy. There are lots of school districts that say don't sign up for any classes. There are lots of school districts that say sign up for half a day of classes. And so my thought process behind this was, we don't really have, we're always talking about not having enough space. So we don't really want to encourage people to come for more classes. But I thought one class would give us a touch point with the student. So this is not for IHSA sports, right? That has a different set. This is for non-IHSA sports, that we would ask the students to be enrolled just in one class so that we would have a touch point with them. So like I think earlier, Mrs. McHugh spoke about her daughter being a band. She's in a class. Maybe the homeschool parent says, I want to sign up for science because I don't want to have to do the experiments at home. Or.
But then, okay, I want to make sure I'm clear. So the parent that signs up for science, are they signing up for science so that then their student can participate in the extracurriculars?
So they would have to be a part-time student at the school is what we're
Okay.
saying. That we
Okay.
will allow part-time students to find as one class
Got it.
to participate in these other extracurriculars.
Okay.
And this also solves a lot of our problems. When you enroll in one class, or not problems, our questions, then you have to go on Skyward, you have to register, you have to turn in your physical and your immunizations and all the policies and pay the fees, and you do everything so that you are enrolled.
So that
And
takes
then
care
we're
of the
saying
enrollment issue.
that one student, so, I mean, you graciously provided me with a list of the questions that the administrators actually had about this policy. And so, I mean, I can tell you a few of the answers I have. I feel as though our job is to say, this is what we would like to have happen, and then have other people be the implementers, but I'm really happy to tell you what I found. So the first one on here is, what do we do to let them know about tryouts and things like that? And my idea for that was we have a calendar on the school webpage that we could have things put on that is available to the whole public. Not only would that serve the purpose of answering this question, that someone who is potentially interested could be there, but I have heard many people say that it would be wonderful to have a school calendar where all the things were centrally located. So when you got that email that said basketball tryouts were someday, and you're like, where are basketball tryouts? You know, you could go to the school calendar, and then you would see, oh, basketball tryouts are Wednesday at 5:30 or whenever they would be. So that could answer that. What does the curriculum look like? And who's responsible to make sure that it meets expectations for content and rigor? So that would be whoever's looking over it. In the school districts I've talked to, the principal could do it. They could look over the form. The schools I talked to, they just brought in their curriculum.
What kind of calendar do you mean though? Like, we already have a calendar on the junior high website that has all the activities on it, and the high school, what did you mean?
Okay,
So
well
that's
then you
all
have a
out there.
calendar
Okay.
that gives all the
That wasn't a
dates.
question that I asked though, I was just getting that
I
clarified.
know, but I'm going off the questions that Lindsay said were actually from the administrators,
Okay.
that they summarized.
It would be nice, just in general, to have
A
one
calendar.
broad calendar that said, high school's got a band competition, junior high has the 8th grade, 7th grade band musical. I mean, the idea of having a centralized calendar where all of the activities live, I think would be an enhancement across the district in general. So, if that lives somewhere already, I've only seen it by school, but the idea of
There are
the whole
4 by school, but.
district having that, this would be a place to put that.
There is another way. If the school wanted to be more rigorous than the schools that I've checked with, I went online for half an hour and looked up some stuff, and I found out that the NCAA requires students to take certain classes. We're sort of all aware of that in high school in order to qualify for NCAA. And it turns out that the NCAA completely recognizes that kids are homeschooled and could play for the NCAA. And so they actually have a thing. I've printed it out. I can give it to you if you want.
I'm just concerned about IHSA, IESA, and how it impacts our district though. Like, I appreciate all the effort they put into that and our conference too, where we are, but did you talk with the junior high and the ADs there? Because those are the two areas, and I've heard you say you've referenced Dr. Hall, and I also got that same document today, and I heard that you say you talked to Mr. Hensley, but we have a big junior high with a lot of kids, and there's a lot of things that there are great thoughts out there. We can roll on it, we can start planning, but again, this is just where I am, and I respect your opinion, I'm sure you do mine. Just getting some of these things massaged a bit further, and we've started the school year, we're into the school year. And when you're making comments about the detail, in the new 19-20 term of being on the board, we've been all about the detail. So I'm trying to model the things that I get so that we move forward in an aligned way where the detail matters and we look like we're looking at what's best for our community, what's best for our policies, and what's best for our procedures that affect our community, not just our students, but our community. And homeschool students are a part of our community.
Okay, so, sorry, I just am a little confused because we just went through the process of talking about a movie policy where we simply wanted to add a 48-hour time period into that policy, and we were told that that was too in the weeds. And that needed to be taken out and done administratively, and that was gonna be taken, that doesn't belong inside of a policy. So are we now saying that all of this detail needs to belong inside of this policy?
I just think this is, I just view it as a much larger change than that particular policy you're referencing.
Can I,
So
That's,
can
that's
I respond to
can
that?
I finish? Sorry,
Go
no,
ahead.
you can go ahead.
No, all the detail absolutely does not need to be in the policy. I just wanna have a good handle on what we're getting into here. That's.
Right, and so that was sort of the suggestions I was trying to make, was that my suggestion is if someone wants it to be more streamlined or rigorous, there is this document provided by the NCAA where they ask people to fill out a 2-page list about each course that they take. And from that, the NCAA determines whether that is a course acceptable as a course, right? Now, we of course don't care about what the NCAA says about our courses, we care what we say. But my suggestion here was, if we want to be more rigorous than just looking over the curriculum, there's directions about how to fill this form out, which things, and it's a form already made for us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What's the prerequisite, what's the text used, who designed the curriculum, what's the course description, what's the course outline and goals, what types of assessment are used, how are they graded, what's the grade based on, So you have this form, and you can either adapt it or just use it like it is. If that would make it easier for someone to evaluate that there are 5 courses being taken. In order to meet the IHSA homeschool rules, you need to prove your residency, so bring your electric bill, and these courses. So you need to say that there's 5 courses. One of the questions that was asked, it was about what happens if students drop. But homeschool students by law are not allowed to drop classes. Unlike here, where we require students to take 5 classes at a minimum, Illinois state law requires homeschool students to take 7 classes, and they're not allowed to drop, or they're in violation of the law. So they need to take math, English, social studies, science, health, PE, and fine arts all the time. So we know already that they're taking 7 classes, which the minimum number is 5, so we don't have to worry about that, and they can't drop them, so we don't have to worry about that. As for the next question on the list is about waivers and vaccinations and legal paperwork. So when the student comes in, we say, here's a login to Skyward, register your students. So we have the students registered, they register on 8 to 18, they come in and have a meeting for about half an hour, or maybe longer. If you wanna make the meeting 17 hours, that's completely your prerogative, right? I mean, we don't decide these administration things. You evaluate the curriculum, and then you tell the parent, every Thursday by noon, you have to turn in a grade report to us. I understand that it's different, and so different is sometimes hard, but we have had this policy for 2.5 months already, right? So I'm not sure what more time is gonna do for that.
September 30th was when we had the policy meeting.
Well, actually, I emailed it to you on September 9th.
Right, but we had the meeting where all the dialogue came out of it. I mean, we knew it was coming. So, I mean, we can keep talking and that's fine. I just am not, I'm going to say that I feel like we are not taking the right opportunity to do it right with things in place. We're going to say, I mean, I know if someone came to me and said, I need you to start everything over here tomorrow, we're gonna do this. It's probably not going to look as well articulated as it would, bless you, had I done it and planned for it and executed it and had it be something that we looked at, had right, and we come back and we have all that and, possibly look at it to start a new school year. Because again, I'm not opposed to it. I'm opposed that we don't have all our ducks in a row, in my opinion, to do it right.
Question.
Starting tomorrow,
We,
if it passes.
the presentation you gave last month, there seemed to be a huge discrepancy between what you found out as far as what policies existed in other districts And then what Dr. Hall got when she called administrators about what they were actually doing, or what they said they were actually doing, what they thought they were actually doing.
Yes.
Okay. So that has me concerned a little bit, because why is that?
And that for me is the exact opposite. To me, that's one of the things I was gonna bring up, and I kind of forgot here in my talking, is that this policy is in place in, like, at least half the school districts in our state.
But they're
And-
not doing it.
Well, except maybe they are doing it. The thing is, if it was a problem, the superintendent would know, right? There are tons of things that just happen, it's the way we do things. The superintendent might not even know about it because it's not a problem. Problems rise to the superintendent, right? I mean, she wishes they didn't maybe, because all the problems end up in her office. But I'm not trying to like be mean or make things
No,
up.
I
I
know.
just think that we can do this in a way that's not so hard. And because other school districts do, and you know, when I talked to this one principal, he said, I was really nervous when we first started this, because I thought, what are we gonna do, and who are these people gonna be, and he said, I can't believe what a delight it is, right? It's just, I don't think it's as difficult as we're making it, and I think the benefit far outweighs the minor little blips that we're gonna have to get into a routine. And I understand this idea, like, well, let's wait till the next school year, except we have a whole bunch of kids right now that wanna participate. And there's no.
Does this include our intramural programs?
Are they extracurricular activities? I don't know.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Have you ever, okay.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Have you talked to anybody, who ran into a situation where the curriculum was not approved? And what?
I have not, but I did talk to someone at the IHSA who said the general idea here is that you want to make sure the student is being schooled. So it's not that it's not that the expectation is that you're gonna sit down and say, oh my gosh, what are you doing here, and maybe you need to do this. Like, it's not about micromanaging someone's homeschool curriculum. The general idea is to make sure the kid is being schooled,
What
right?
about the part that says they're gonna, on their IHSA, where it says you're gonna get credit, they have to get credit towards graduation?
And so and I asked, it can be elective credit. So you don't have to give any specific credit, you just have to say this is a class. So when you sit down and someone says, I'm teaching English, so then you say, what are you doing? Well, it's freshman English, we're gonna read Animal Farm, we're gonna read Romeo and Juliet, we're gonna read these short stories, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and all these other stories. My kid is gonna write a paper, they have to write a short story, we're gonna do grammar lessons, right? Like, that's freshman English. You don't even have to say it's freshman English, like, that's a course. Okay, now math. Oh, we're taking geometry, here's the book, we're using this book, we're going through, we're taking the assessments from the teacher guide. I give them, every chapter, and the kid has to take it without the book, and then, oh, we're taking art. I signed up for lessons at this art studio, and my kid goes 2 days a week to art, right? I mean, you don't have to.
So,
I think the reason that the IHSA has this is so that you don't have a student who's not doing well in a class, drop out of the class at the high school, get homeschooled,
well,
participates in their activity, and then once the activity is over, comes back to school. We have super awesome principals and staff who understand what's going on in their building. I think they're going to be able to sit down with a parent and understand if what's being presented is comparable to and real to what's going on in the building. It's not gonna be the same. Across our own district, we educate kids where they are, we strive to. So even the education we provide within our buildings doesn't look the same for every student. So I don't think it would be fair to all of a sudden have a different standard for a homeschool student than we even do across the kids within our own buildings. We try and meet kids where they are, which by necessity means that we tailor things as appropriate. And homeschool just does that in a different way.
So you would, I'm gonna throw something out there. and I don't even know if this is the way I'm gonna say it, so I'll say it, and I'm sure I'll get corrected if I'm not right. Can we say that we will make a plan, like a 1 to 3 month plan, where we will figure out how to implement this and have it in place so that it can pass with integrity? Because again, I keep going back that I'm not opposed to it, I just want it to be done the right way.
But how is this not the right way? Like, we presented it at the policy committee, we had it in the meeting for a first reading, now we had a second reading. Not really seeing any policies any other way.
Yeah, we have, because we had one that came back and then it went back to committee. We have, and it's just not the same universal thing for anything all along. Like, I feel like.
So I guess my question is, so when we come back in 3 months?
I didn't say 3, I said 1 to 3 months, like I just said that there.
Okay, when we come back, are we now suggesting that, let's say Mr. Benedict comes and says, this is what we figured out for the high school. Are we now going to dive in and say, you know, I don't really feel comfortable with
No,
that?
but they'll have an opportunity to plan it. Did you talk to the junior high? And did you talk to the junior high AD?
Well,
I don't know.
The question is, this is where I'm struggling. In other policies, we've been told that the board acts at the policy level and all of the logistics and the procedural implementation of that is done with the superintendent and through the buildings. But this sounds to me like we're not being asked to do that at this level. If we say we will pass this tonight and our expectation as the board is that we're gonna shoot for January 1st so that the next spring sports, all of these kids have the opportunity to enroll in, that to me seems like procedurally they will be able to go and figure it out. In the work that Colleen's done, it seems to me that this can be as complicated or as simple as we choose to make it. If we want to make 16 forms and have people go through the rigor of that, that's certainly our prerogative. I would suggest we err more on the come in and have a conversation with the principal, because it sounds like that works just well in some districts too.
If we're going to pass this, then for me to have a comfort level to vote yes on this, we would need to pass it and say, we're gonna put this in effect. I don't know if January 1's enough time, I don't know if September or next August gives them enough time. But we can't do it effective immediately because there's processes that need to be put in place. And you're right, we don't need to put them in place, but the staff needs to put them in place. IHSA talks about credits towards graduation, okay? So if I understand this right, if I've got a homeschool child and he or she is homeschooled all 4 years of high school, but they're taking a class a semester here and they're playing a sport, maybe 1 or 2 sports a year here. At the end of that, they've got 4 years worth of credits, and they can get a Mahomet-Seymour diploma.
No, because we require 4 years of English and 3 years of math and 2 years of, I don't know all these rules, right? 4 years of PE and 2 years of this, and if we articulate their courses as elective. So even if the kid comes in with something that we say, this is English 1, we don't articulate it as English 1, we say, yep, that works for us. Then when the kid has 20 credits, 20 credits doesn't do it, right? If a kid came in and took art every year, art, industrial arts, took all those classes and never took English, you wouldn't give them a degree, right? You have to take the requirements of our.
Okay. And then my other concern has really not much to do with homeschool students like we heard tonight. This young man who spoke tonight, he's exemplary, okay? Or at least appeared to be to me. But what, I don't know, just going by what I heard. But what Megan said, that's gonna happen. We're gonna have a parent, we're gonna have a child who's struggling to stay academically eligible. And we're gonna have a parent that says, well, I'm just gonna take this child out and I'm gonna do homeschooling, and that way I'll make sure they pass the classes to stay eligible.
But I have more faith in Chad and Nathan that they will be able to identify that,
Well,
right?
then what do we do?
Yeah, what do you do when you've identified it?
Well, if Chad and Nathan think this person is coming and they're not really teaching their kid, this is really a scam, they're just saying that, right? Which one of the principals I talked to said, all I'm looking for is to make sure they're not scamming me with this scam, right? Well, if the kid is running track and then drops out to do this, well, I really have faith in our principals to be able to identify that, and then they would have to, maybe when they flip through the curriculum, they will look more carefully, they will ask more questions, they will ensure that the kid is actually being educated. And maybe if a kid's doing poorly in school, educating them one-on-one would be one way to increase their academic achievement.
I agree with that. I have confidence in our people too, and I think they'll do their best to handle that. But, if you've got a parent who's already rubbed up because their child's not doing well, and the child and the parent want the child in the activity, and then they go, we'll come up with this plan, and they do that, and then you tell them, oh, by the way, we think you're scamming us, this isn't right. We're putting people in an awful tough position.
We're scamming the system. You could
Yeah.
say you need to provide more information for me, or, right, to make sure, because really, one of the things that could happen, even if you had a kid like this, right? If you are in school and you get a D- on the chapter 3 math test, what do you do the next day? Chapter 4, right? Because that's how school is. Because we have 28 kids in a classroom and you can't stop the whole class to say, Bobby didn't get chapter 3, so let's do that. But when you're homeschooled, the parent can say, you don't get chapter 3, we are gonna keep working on chapter 3. Even if you have to have math more than 40 minutes a day, maybe you have to have math 4 hours a day, split up over time, so that you can understand this concept, right? I mean, I think it's just, and if they're not teaching, right? If they don't get the idea that they're teaching and doing a job, then they can say no.
I just, I appreciate the discussion, it's helped clarify a lot for me. But I think, it needs to be mentioned and I think kind of be quantified and summarized that we've hit on a number of different tasks that are being handed off to administrators whose plates are already extremely full. So one is calendarize everything and I don't disagree that that would be valuable. We have a difficult time keeping our websites up to date right now. But so there's centralizing and calendarizing information. There's curriculum approval. There's tracking on eligibility and parents turning in grades, I guess, via email. Because I don't know the logistics of Skyward well enough to know if that's gonna work. I think it's being enrolled in one class.
They could send an email, and
right,
then
okay,
only
so
something needs to happen is if they say,
Sure.
my kid is failing all their classes, then you need to add them to the ineligibility
Sure.
list, right?
So that's
Other than
that's
that,
that's kind of a separate, it's a parallel activity to how we do eligibility in Skyward. Then there's potentially, and I would hope this wouldn't happen, but I think it's not out of the question, is tracking down kind of I'm gonna drop all my classes and become homeschooled. So there's absolutely, I think, a fairly significant body of work that goes along with implementing this policy. And again, I wanna stress that I'm just after trying to explore and figure out what it's gonna look like. I appreciate that that's being handed off, but I think that we're putting a lot on people's plates who already have very full plates. And if that's the will of the board, then
I'm happy to work on this policy and put something together because this is important.
No, I
So
think
if
that's
we're
the administrator's
offloading it
job.
and they're overloaded, then we certainly can add some assistance to expediting that and giving them something to
No, I'm not
springboard
talking
off
about
of.
writing the administrative procedures to carry it out. I'm talking about what it looks like, boots on the ground to do it. And that's not something
Dr.
that
Hall,
board members would
Could
participate
you,
in.
could you speak to your experience at Morton with this situation? How is the implementation there?
I honestly don't remember.
You don't know how long it took to spin up the implementation of this?
because this passed while you were superintendent there. at Morton.
Wow. Got me.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to get you, I'm just saying, it
Are you
did pass while you were there, and
serious?
so I'm just wondering how it worked, like, you're the perfect example of how it would work in
Well, I
another
was
district.
hoping that we could maybe
Use that same-
use your experience as a model for how we implement those.
I would honestly have to go back and look at when that happened and what we did, because I do not recall that, but I'm, I don't know what I did 3 days ago, let alone.
I understand,
So
Can't
I don't-
remember 3 minutes ago.
I don't mean to put that corner on the spot, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. So you've heard all of this discussion. I guess I would be interested in understanding what your initial thoughts are for a time frame for something like this. I mean,
Well, why don't we break it up into the tasks? Or no?
I don't know, I just am looking for a little bit of, we keep talking around it.
Thought here, to help everybody's comfort level with this and to go in the direction that we'd like to go. And I'll just throw this out for discussion, and then we can let them comment if we wanna have them comment. What if we took 2020, the year coming up, and say, you know what? We'll allow participation, because I think most of the concern comes to IHSA and IESA stuff. That's where we've gotten the most heartburn, and how do we make this work? So what if we say between now and the start of 2020, let's look at 2020 being a year where we allow participation in things that are non-IHSA and non-IESA stuff, and see what happens in 2020. And then during 2020, while we're doing that, we'll take what we've learned from that, let the administrators figure out how to do the IESA and IHSA piece, and then roll that out in 2021. Why do we have to bite it all off at once? Why can't we phase it in, go in a direction that we think makes sense, and give people an opportunity to kind of absorb this and work through it and think through it ahead of time? That would be my
It's 2
thought.
years of
Because
kids
that's
that
2
don't
years-
get to participate.
No.
And this, from all of the research that Colleen did, this does not seem like this is that hard a task. I mean, it doesn't seem like we're reinventing something that hasn't been done. And since we are in control of the process and the procedure around it, we can choose to either make it easy or we can choose to make it hard.
We could also just implement it, and then if it turns out to be more difficult than we want, there's nothing that says that we can't readdress the issue at a future date,
I
right?
think once it's in place, it's gonna be harder. Any thoughts from the administrative corner on this?
The only thing I would say related to the timeline is understand that we're past the winter sport tryouts, and many of our winter sports at the high school have cut activities.
And so you missed it then. If you didn't try out and there were tryouts, but we're not saying give special dispensation, right? But if you haven't had tryouts, so for you, it'll be spring sports, right?
So
Unless there's something not cut that didn't start yet. I mean, I think maybe at the junior high, there might be some sports that are non-cut that haven't even started yet, right? Wrestling or, if a kid wants to do that and see what happens. Maybe it's an experiment of see who's gonna show up for this. It might be 4 kids. And then they can sort of learn by doing, right? As long as we know that there's sort of this, we've talked to other schools, we know this policy is not gonna get us in trouble, then we can see, oh, we did this, but maybe it would help to have a form, or maybe this would be better. And it's a learning as you go process.
I think that the community has wanted this and asked us for this. We are partnering with them. I think there will be grace on both sides, understanding that as we do this and as we roll this out, there is going to be some give and take, and we might not get it 100% right the first time, but I think there will be understanding on that side that we're working towards a goal together.
Yeah, we've heard many people come and speak to us. We've gotten a lot of emails, and they've all been asking for us to do this. I know on the campaign trail, I had people asking me to work on this. And the community wants this.
I mean, I have received dozens of contacts, and every single one has been, yes, please help us, we like this idea. I
Right.
haven't had a single, not to say that they're not out there, I'm just saying of the contacts that I've had on this, I haven't had one that indicated, you know,
Yeah.
a desire to not move forward with this.
For the record, I'm comfortable exploring this, I'm not comfortable with a start everything right now approach. So, anything else from our ministers? Anyone else want to chime in? You're not obligated to chime in.
If you had 1 to 3 months to put a policy together and it would be helpful for a spring 2020 implementation, do you think it's feasible to put something together that would make it easier to acclimate? You're not obligated to answer that either, like what you said.
They are smart enough
to
stay out of this discussion.
Fair enough.
If I were them, I'd be quiet. Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Oops. Oh, audience. Oh, I am sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, so we've got a 5-minute, we can set the clock for 5 minutes. Audience, questions or comments? Raise your hand. Yes.
Couple things. I think it would be very rare for a parent to try to pull off the trick the district thing. Because of many community factors, and everybody would know that that's what they were trying to do. So I think that's very unrealistic to see that happen. I think that implementing this, certainly at the junior high level, because there is no diploma issues, there's no credit issues, would make sense, if nothing else. And I would highly recommend that our principals call the principal at Unity, for instance, and talk with him, because he told me how easy this was to implement. He gave me the model that he did and how successful it was there. Perhaps he would be willing to mentor our district, because it didn't sound like it was very hard for him. Again, I think that, you know, obviously in the case of my student, she's already enrolled, she's good to go. But, you know, by putting that 1 hour class period, you will have a little bit of time. It will take those parents that don't have a kid in yet time to pull it together. Thank you.
Who else? Yes.
Hi. I was just gonna comment about the like tricking the district thing too. So like wouldn't that be something that you put into the policy, the procedure?
You remember?
That if you're in a sport and you drop out to homeschool, then you're not eligible to participate in that sport until the next season.
Yeah, that's a thought.
I mean, just something, you know.
I'm not sure we do that or not. I've had more than one phone conversation with a very frustrated parent whose child is suddenly ineligible. And again, I know some of the homeschool parents will have a hard time believing that could really happen, but it will happen.
Oh, no, I'm sure people will try it. I'm just saying.
Or no, there will be an attempt at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Under Illinois law, it is the requirement that a homeschooling parent meet at least the equivalent things happening in the public school.
Right.
So the burden is really, when we say we're gonna homeschool, the burden is on us to make sure we're abiding by the law. You know, otherwise we can get in some trouble. So I'm just saying, like, it is on us, and I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board?
No, I appreciate the dialogue with the community and the administration, sort of. They didn't say much.
Colin, thank you for your work. I mean, I imagine the hours that you put in. I appreciate the research and.
Great.
You did.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Keefe,
Yes.
Larson,
Abstain.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Hendricks, Schultz,
Yes.
Giles, McComb.
Abstain. And we're passed.
I am an articulator at the university, so if anyone needs help, I am willing to talk about that, because I've done that for a decade, so I'm happy to.
I'm not sure we landed on the start date. January 1st?
Ken, when you go up there, I keep
Pretty much
thinking,
what I-
where's he going?
I'm not here.
Next item, we moved item 10 to item 5, resolution for the conference. If, I don't know, if you probably got it on your screen, I've got my hard copy here. The resolutions that we have, first of all, in the past, I've neglected talking to Lori about this today, but typically we have used the vice president as our delegate. And you are going to be there, correct?
Yes, you wouldn't have been able to find me.
So we can talk, I guess, when we get done about that, but my recommendation would be we stick with that plan. But there's 12 resolutions, and on each one of them there is an IASB recommendation. They recommend yes on all of them except 8 and 10. 10, of course, is one where we pay board members.
No, we worked for a
And
while.
8, I didn't write down what 8 was. So what I recommend is that, and Colleen mentioned this, we have to look at like a consent agenda. That the motion on the table is to approve following the IASB recommendation, except for numbers that we want to pull out for further discussion, okay? I'm just gonna guess right now that one of the numbers we wanna pull out for further discussion is number 1.
I would like to pull number
Yes.
one.
So we're gonna pull number 1. Are there any other resolutions that anybody wants to pull out for individual discussion? Okay, so, I guess the motion I'm recommending is, and I'll make the motion, that we approve items 2 through 12 as recommended by the IASB. Is there a motion to do that?
I move that we recommend 1 through, or whatever.
Yeah, 2 through 12.
2 through 12, and nominate Lori to be our delegate.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, got a motion and a second on that?
Will you guys be there? Because I know last year, this is in a second, so I'll wait.
No, go ahead.
I second it.
The person that was delegated found it valuable to be able to have some time to talk with some of the board members, so I'm glad to know that.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second on that. Is there further discussion from the board? Is there any discussion from the audience on anything that's not number 1?
We did well.
Hearing none. We can do this on an up and down vote, right? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that carries. So, we got item number 1. Item number 1 is the arming teachers that comes out of Mercer County. The IASB's position is that this is a local control issue. I know we've got concerns about guns, I get that. I don't know that any of us, I said last month, I don't know if this is anything we would ever consider here. Even if it passed, quite honestly, I don't even know if the Illinois legislature would ever pass it regardless of what the IASB lobbied. But we get to vote on whether the IASB should lobby that or not. Clearly, since guns are the issue, and I'm a big local control kind of guy, I think I could see a situation where we might want to do something that was kind of out of the box, and we would want some support of the other member schools in that. But I don't think it would involve guns. So, is there a motion on number 1?
I move that we say no.
Okay, I got a motion to no. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I just want to say that I too really believe in local control. Like I feel like government is just too big and too overreaching. And I also don't believe that the solution to the gun violence problem we have is to take guns away from mentally healthy, law-abiding citizens, right? That's not where I am. And so when I first read a policy like this, I am inclined to say, yes, let's let the local control, right? Maybe these people have a need and who am I to tell them what to do? But But I have to say that we had some people come and speak at our board who made really compelling arguments that led me to things that I thought more about and researched. Things like how police officers have so much training and still freeze up, the accidental rates, there are all these different things. And so I think about how I'm supposed to be a representative of the community, and I have not heard anyone ask me to vote yes, and I've heard a lot of people ask me to vote no, with really reasoned arguments. Now, if someone came with something ridiculous that I completely disagreed with, I might not be voting for it, but I just feel like that what they said was compelling, and it led me to start thinking about safety in schools and what that really needs to look like, even for a place like Mercer, who it turns out has a student resource officer. So they actually have a police officer with a gun in their school, so that's a little less compelling for their argument. But it makes me think, especially also in light of this recent shooting in California, where if you read about the shooter, everyone says he was a normal kid, quiet kid, ran cross country, went to school, was a nice kid. But then if you read every article at the end, it says, but he was struggling. I knew he was struggling because his dad had died, right? And it makes me think that the real solution here is not about giving a teacher a gun. The real solution here is about identifying who is struggling and how we help them and what we do. And I just feel like that's something that we need to rethink about and look and talk about. And other security issues. There's this continuum where at the end, the best choice is to get a gun, right? And we have to worry about what we do here, but I think we should worry more about what happens back here. But if we somehow get here, we have to do other things. But maybe better than arming a teacher would be to put in metal detectors so the guns can't get in the school in the first place, right? You look at the city of Chicago, who has outrageous gun crime. There's never school shootings there because you can't get a gun in the school because they have metal detectors, right? And maybe locking our doors and doing those other kind of things. And so I guess I'm just advocating that our board might, going forward, really take a look at how we can do that and the steps we can actively take. I was real happy to see every principal say social emotional health was on their list of goals for the year. And I guess I'm just advocating that we might push hard to make sure that those things happen sooner rather than later so that we can really make a change and change the trajectory. There's my speech, sorry.
I concur.
Well said. Any other comments from the board?
I just want to clarify that we will be voting to vote no on this.
That is the
That's
motion.
That's
The motion on the
because it
table.
is a little confusing.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that we
Yes.
are voting to say
So when you
no
vote,
to
you're
this.
voting yes.
And I'm
to
writing
no.
it all down.
Right.
If you vote no, you're voting yes. If
Just
you vote
wanted
yes, you're
to
voting no.
clarify that before we go into this vote.
Okay. Go ahead and start the 5-minute clock. Comments from the crowd, yes. All right.
I'm curious if that, I know this came before IASB last year, so how did this board vote last year?
I don't know that the delegate assembly that it ever got voted on.
It
They
did.
It did.
It did.
I don't remember.
Jenny Park was our delegate.
And
I'm not
Jenny's the
sure.
delegate.
I don't remember, Mary, I'm sorry.
But it didn't go anywhere after that.
It got voted down, but only by
Yeah.
24 votes, so
Yeah,
that's why I'm
voted.
curious why Mahomet voted.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which means our Mahomet vote matters. I mean, if it was
Absolutely.
that close,
Absolutely.
Every vote matters.
always.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so I want to say I'm a political organizer, and for my job, I work on political activism. And one of the ways that that organizations sometimes get their more brazen ideas into the public is they go around to local governments where they'll have debates like this, and they'll make issues sound reasonable. Like arming teachers, it initially sounded very unreasonable to people, kind of is ridiculous, but then when people start talking about it in settings like this, it gives it validity. So I just want to make sure that when you vote on this, you keep in mind that we don't want to fall prey in Mahomet here to a game that lobbyists are playing in back rooms. I know that they do it because I use tricks like this too. It's a good tactic. It gets things done, but we shouldn't fall prey to that, and we should vote yes to vote no on this and not on teachers.
Anybody else?
Ironically, for a lobbying organization.
I guess I just would add that, I guess you mentioned this before, but we've just had there's been so much discussion about the well-researched proposal that Colleen has made, lots and lots and lots of deep thinking and discussion about that. I just don't feel like we should blow this off as a local control issue. I don't think, there is no good research anywhere that shows that this practice would be in any way effective or safe. In fact, it shows that it's more likely to be unsafe. So I just can't imagine voting yes on something that's just like, oh, no, maybe it'll work. I don't think it's sound.
Anybody else? On the table? Those in favor of our motion, which is to vote no on the IASB proposal, say aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed and want us to vote no, yes, on the IASB proposal, say aye now. Carries, we will vote no on the proposal. All right. 2, 4, 5. Okay, so 4 is now 6. And we're going to the top of page 2 and kind of working our way down in order again. Memorandum of Understanding, Dr. Hall.
We've worked, Trent and I have been working with the MSEA to come up with a proposal.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and sharing.
Okay, Dr. Hall.
Okay, the memorandum of understanding that is being presented to the board tonight for approval has been a collaborative effort between Trent and I, working with the MSEA after talking with the boards in terms of getting your feel for moving ahead with this. And so what this allows is to bring back the early retirement incentive at 5.5%. When we negotiated the collective bargaining agreement in the summer of 2018, the law had been changed and had capped end of career earnings at 3%. And so actually what we saw was that there was no one who took advantage of that. It really wasn't much of an incentive because the actual raise in the contract was 2.8%, so 3% didn't really represent a big incentive. And so the law was changed once again this past summer. Governor Pritzker signed back in a 6% cap, and we just have had the early retirement incentive at 5.5% with a little bit of a cushion in there, because if you exceed the 6%, there are penalties to pay. And so
And the problem is stipends sometimes.
yeah, sometimes there's some extra pay, hourly pay, stipends that can bump that over 6%. So we want to keep a little bit of a cushion there. We feel, and I think I speak for the MSEA, that this is a mutually beneficial piece of language to bring back. On our end, it allows us to plan ahead. We know who's in the retirement pipeline. We can see who is going to be retiring in the next couple of years. And actually now another component to that that's somewhat helpful is that with the teacher shortage, we can start to really look down the road and say, hey, we're gonna need this and that, you know. I mean, there's all kinds of shortages in different areas, but in particular, if we can know in advance of some areas that are particularly hard to find, that will also be helpful. The other part of the memorandum for understanding has to do with the minimum wage law. And very simply, it just states that for our hourly employees who are impacted by that, we will just meet the raising of the minimum wage over the next several years. So we'll need to bring up people who, you know, who are going to be below that as the minimum wage ramps up. We will need to bring them up to the minimum wage. What we wanted to get in writing was a little bit of a cost control piece with that, to not have to, during the life of this collective bargaining agreement, kind of proportionately raise everybody else's hourly rates as the minimum wage went into effect. So we will follow the law, obviously, and raise the hourly rates of those folks whose hourly rates need to be raised again as the minimum wage gets ramped up over the next couple of years. So the MSBA has already put their signature on the memorandum of understanding, and so it's my recommendation that the board approve it, and then we'll get to work on that, because I think we have my senses, we might have some teachers that want to take advantage of the early retirement incentive this year.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the MOU as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Motion. We'll give Lori the second. Discussion from the board.
Seems like one of those odd win-wins,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Everything seems
Yeah.
good.
I want to thank Trent for his work on it and digging down into the salary schedules and looking at.
Didn't it change during negotiations too?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
It
was.
changed
and then
during
we're like,
negotiations.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add, Trent?
No, that's perfect explanation.
Okay. 5-minute timer. Are there comments or questions
Welcome,
from
Dr. Henry.
those in attendance?
Yes.
Let the record reflect Dr. Hendricks has arrived.
Did you line on this?
Yep. We'll get you guys a note. Okay, any
Where are
questions?
We're voting.
No,
Sorry.
questions or comments from the crowd? There appear to be none. So, Jeremy, we're voting on item 6, which actually is number 4, the MOU. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Giles, Hendricks,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, we're going.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yep, we're going to the new item number 7, which is adoption of estimated 2019 tax levy. Trent?
Share the screen here. Okay, so this is my calculation for the estimated 2019 tax levy. I emailed that to the board, kind of the timeline for what the levy timeline looks like in a year, about 10 days ago or so. But this first step is establishing, or like I said, the board adopting an estimated levy. And then if that estimated levy is above a 5% increase, then there's additional steps. This levy, I'll just tell you up front, does not include a 5% increase, so none of those requirements will be there. But just to take you through the calculation,
Bless you.
I might just head up here and point some of this stuff out. That's good, I'll use this. All right, so we have last year's tax levy extension. This orange column with a little light green. It resulted in a 2018 tax rate of 4.5752. We do have certain funds that have max rate limits on them, so that would be the ed fund. Any fund here that would have a rate limit on that fourth column over, those are max rates for those funds. The bond fund itself that number is actually recorded at the county level, so that rate is determined for us. And then we do have some discretion over the IMRF. It's the yellow cells there. IMRF, liability insurance, which is the tort fund, and Social Security. So As we look then toward this 2019 estimated levy, can everybody see that? The main factor here that we need to determine is what we want to assume for EAV, the equalized assessed valuation, essentially our tax base, the value of that. So last year, $356,719,331 in value that we can issue or that we can levy taxes on. Every year we do get a county assessor estimate on what that will be for our upcoming levy. Again, it's only an estimate, but it has been historically pretty darn accurate. And they are estimating an increase, it's pretty small there, but increase of 3.68%, which would put us up to 369, almost 370 million in EAV. So when I'm doing this calculation, we need to kind of determine what we want to assume for the EAV for this particular levy. And I'm going to assume 3.9% just because you don't want to leave any money on the table, so to speak. So that would then drive the rest of the calculation. That the rates listed on the calculation page here would be then multiplied by that $370 million number. Follow me, Max? You've heard all this before. And so like I said, the rate limits here, those are determined for us when we get down to this column. So then the yellow cells are, like I said, where we have some discretion. I am proposing that we increase the IMRF and Social Security line items a little bit there just to kind of supplement that fund balance. Excuse me, that fund has been kind of slightly declining over the years, so I just want to be sure we keep that fund balance up. On the liability insurance fund, again, the tort fund, the fund that we would implement our risk management procedures through, excuse me, I would propose that we increase that from close to 820,000 to 930,000. That would be the fund that we would then pay for making the schools safer, adding cameras to any of the schools. We have certain areas where we'd like to do that. The insurance costs in general, legal matters would be paid out of that in terms of outstanding litigation. And that fund has also suffered a decline over the last couple of years, and we'd just like to supplement that as well. So that takes us to this column over here, estimated abatement. We have, for the last, I think it's about 9 years now, ever since the 1% sales tax, we have abated a certain amount of taxes, which would just be, we would alter that amount that we would otherwise levy in the bond fund. And that $815,190 is the total of all of our payments for the alternate revenue source bonds. Any of the bonds we have outstanding for that would be then paid by the 1% sales tax, we would then just ask the county not to collect that amount in taxes, which would then reduce that line item to the $2.3 million instead. So all of that to say that this calculation would essentially result in a level tax rate, 4.5752. This estimated levy would be 4.58. And again, that won't be the exact number because we don't know the exact EAV, but those estimates it's been very helpful to have the county assessors incredibly accurate estimates for that, because that does help us try to accurately calculate our tax levies. So
Yeah.
a lot of information there. Any questions though? I just want to at least kind of run through the mechanics of how that
With
works.
some of the struggles coming out of the county recently, do we think their EAV number is still going to be accurate?
I don't believe that department was so much affected by that.
Okay.
I feel pretty good about
The
our
assessor's office, not the treasurer's office.
Right. Yep, that's a good question though.
The Social Security and IMRF funds, those are pretty stable in terms of, those are very predictable, correct?
Yeah, generally.
So the amounts that you had listed there, how over the budget do you think we are? How much padding are you giving us essentially?
Within the budget that was done back in September, we received these estimates. I'm sorry, I can't go back.
That's okay.
We get the estimates in August, so I've already built in. Where's Jared? We're almost there. Here we go. Already built in a 3.7% increase in those revenue accounts.
Okay.
So that's already kind of built in. Knowing that what that estimate was back in August, that helped. So I've had this built for a little while.
But what
in previous years, we haven't we haven't had the increases here that, I mean, otherwise, that's the only revenue source in that fund. I just want to be sure that does keep up with expenses. Does that make sense?
But I guess what I'm saying is those expenses are pretty predictable, aren't they?
Generally, yeah.
So, given
Can't
the current
necessarily-
prediction,
Yeah, we can't necessarily predict, overtime and different needs throughout the year, but,
okay.
usually pretty accurate on that fund.
And what are the current balances on those two? Those aren't on the red flag report, right?
Those are not, no.
Okay.
There's really no reason why they're not, it's just they're not
Well,
operating funds necessarily, but,
right.
hang with me here, hold on. I'm just gonna open up my, the budget packet.
It's a preliminary levy, you'll do the final vote in December.
All right, wow, this is gonna be convoluted like all numbers have been last year, this year. I'm ref, we're at negative $70,000, thanks county. So, the direct revenue on that column, that would include again, that July payment that should have been in July. Loaded question, hard to answer, but, it would bring us up to $550,000. We've been somewhat hovering around there. It's, at one point it was higher, it was closer to 600,000 or 700,000.
And so the tort is the liability, right? Those are the same.
That's right.
So that is in the red fund, and that's at a pretty good balance. It's at the highest it's been in like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we paid down quite a bit of it. We used a fair amount of that in Middletown Phase 1, so it's been building it back up since then. That's a fund that you don't know, in terms of predictability.
Yeah.
If you had a crystal ball on that one, I would buy it in a minute. But, the outstanding litigation bit is the wild card there.
So the idea that I wanted to propose to you and the board, looking at this, is to consider shooting a little lower on those 3 funds with the idea that we would abate less, but still maintain a level estimated rate. Are you following me?
We can't abate less. We have to abate the amount of our alternate revenue source bonds, which that's an exact figure.
You have to abate the 1/3?
No, this is the amount of the payments for our alternate revenue source bonds.
There's no.
We don't have any bonds we can do the third on anymore. That's been the plan from the start. That's why we freed up $600,000 in the capital projects fund.
So there's no flexibility in what we can abate.
Not with the amount here. Those are exact payment amounts from the payment schedules for those bonds.
We will be able to decide whether or not to abate. Is that true?
It's always been my understanding, since those are backed by the 1% sales tax, we wouldn't want to levy taxes on them through property taxes.
So what I was trying to get at was to try and give us a little more revenue in our bond fund so we have to borrow less.
Yeah, no, so that's not how that works. The bond fund, that amount is determined for us by the outstanding bonds the county has on file. We can't up the bond fund. I suppose that's bond referendum or however that would work.
So are you saying that if we choose to not abate, then our revenues are gonna just simply drop by that $815,000?
I'm saying I don't think we don't have the ability to elect not to abate. Since those are, given the nature of those bonds being backed by that 1% sales tax, we have to. The county would be expecting that.
I thought we're the only district in the county that continues to abate.
I don't know what other districts are doing, I don't know.
There's 2 parts to the abatement. There was the original abatement that we agreed to do, and several other districts in the county agreed to do, where we told citizens we abated at 1/3 of the property tax on
Of the available bonds.
Of the available bonds. And we did that until we ran out of bonds we could do that with, and then we just restructured the borrowing to keep that the same for the community.
So we still,
So the optional abatement that we used to have, we really don't have anymore.
Yeah, prior to the 1% sales tax, this rate, this 66 cents on every $100 of VAB was about 96 cents. And that 30% reduction continues, even though we're not doing the 1/3 given, you know, like Max said, we restructured those bonds, those payments moving forward where it would keep that rate at the level it is.
Right.
We're able to do that on the inception of those bonds. To do it now, they already have the bond payments on file. And that is the amount determined each year for what they levy for the bond for us, really. We're not even really levying that amount for the bond fund. For the certificate of levy that will be approved back in December, the bond fund's not even listed on that in terms of.
County auto calculates that.
It's calculated, yeah, that's already set in stone.
so why does the district, or why does the board have to vote whether or not, vote on the abatement in a couple months?
In January.
Yeah, why do we have to do that if it's not optional?
There needs to be formal action with the resolution. And then filed with the county, whatever it was, prior to March, or January 30th or March 31st.
Same reason submitting a budget's not optional, but we have to go on.
Right. It's to formalize the process. So this, like I said, effectively at a level tax rate, with the 0.05 of a penny, it would raise taxes on a $200,000 house $3.21 if it played out to be $4.58, like the estimated rate, but effectively flat.
Sure, originally we'd officially vote on this next month, right?
Yeah, that's the proposed levy, this is the estimated levy.
Right. So do we have to adopt the estimate tonight?
Yes, so there's a resolution then that the next 3 pages of this, it lists those same amounts that are listed in the tax levy calculation. It does say specifically the amounts to be levied for levy year 2019 are not anticipated to be in excess of 105% of, sorry, if I put this back up here, hold on. Let me get it up here. So, yeah, the aggregate levy from this year, from last year, increases by 105%, that's when we need to have, or, you know, publish the truth and taxation notice between now and the proposed levy. We're below 5%.
But tonight, because it's an estimate, do we have to take action to approve the estimate or not? That's where I'm confused.
There needs to be action, yeah. Well, to formally approve this resolution, so I believe that would be through action.
Okay.
So yeah, the truth and taxation law also says if it's over 5%, that's when you need to do the levy hearing.
Right.
We've always historically done that anyway, so I still plan to do that in December, even though we're not required to. And the resolution states that the hearing will be held on Monday, December 16th at 6:30, prior to the regular board meeting.
Okay. So the superintendent recommends we adopt the levy estimate as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion or questions for Trent? Timer, anything from the crowd? Raise your hand if you got something. Seeing none, anything else here? Roll call vote, please.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes?
Schultz,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Giles, Keith,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Item 8, used to be item 6, health, dental, vision, insurance renewals, Trent.
Yes, so we'll start with health insurance. Health Alliance is proposing.
Yeah, so I'll read it,
Oh.
right?
I love hearing you talk, and you're very well prepared. However, I did read all of this, and so I thought maybe we could, in the interest of time, just go out on a limb and vote on it. Would you be all right
I'd
with
be
that?
thrilled with that.
Would you be okay
I'm
with
not
that?
pushing back on
I
that.
don't want to step on your toes.
I'll just say, we're happy with the rates we have in Health Alliance, even more so with vision insurance. And the dental, we haven't had an increase in a while, so we're probably due.
Superintendent recommends Board of Education approve the resolution, no, wrong one. Superintendent recommends Board of Education approve the health insurance renewal with Health Alliance and dental insurance with Delta Dental and Vision renewal with IMED as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second? Further discussion?
Sorry, guys, but I got one question.
Questions are okay.
Have we gotten any feedback from staff or the union about our insurance offerings? Are they content with them?
Anytime we have, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, anytime we have a proposal from Health Alliance specifically, we always include, or we always notify and inform the leadership of MSEA on that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, if they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience? Anything else up here? Roll call vote, please.
Schultz? Yes. Giles? Larson?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Hennessy?
Yes.
Hendricks?
Yes.
McComb?
Yes, item 9 used to be item 7, resolution concerning review of hazard conditions. Thank you, Art. Welcome.
Thank you. The annual review of hazardous zones within the 1.5 mile radius of schools. The information that was sent with the board packets, a copy from last year, with Middletown being well established and Sangamon well retired. There are no changes. Most developments are adjacent to existing residential properties that are already covered by all of these hazard zones. All of these zones are built in our bus routing software. Don't know if there's much more to discuss with it. We will always look at further developments and how they are impacted by their location to the school. The only one I can think of coming up is the railroad crossing at South Mahomet Road that would provide access from kind of Whisper Meadows neighborhood to Middletown. But if there's no sidewalks and there's a railroad crossing, then that becomes a hazard zone in and of itself. So we will just look at any developments and within that 1.5 mile radius and apply for any new hazard zone assignments as needed. But
So the hazard zones we have now are the same ones we have.
Yep.
We don't have any other hurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so all hazards remain the same. Superintendent recommends the board approve the resolution concerning review of hazardous conditions as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Basically, we have to prove to the state that we've reviewed this and we have to file it.
We've got the same hazards.
Questions from the crowd? Roll call vote, please.
Keith?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Hennessy?
Yes.
Hendricks?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Giles? McComb?
Yes, item 10 used to be item 9, 2021 calendar review. Dr. Romo and Dr. Hall.
I think it's in the packet.
Yeah,
It's in the packet.
Let's go. Here we go.
All right. There you got it.
Superintendent
We're gonna start school and end school.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Ed approve the 2021 calendar as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Hold on.
Board drawn.
Schultz? Is it second?
I was second.
And Hennessy is the first?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Discussion.
I just want to say I'm super happy to not see a Friday start on here. I'm thrilled by this. I think this is great.
And I love that the teachers don't come back on
Right,
Friday.
I mean, that's
super awesome.
That's really nice that we thought through not having them have to have in-services day on the last day of the week and all the implications that that has. So I thought this was well thought out.
Kudos on the calendar. Anything from the crowd on the calendar?
Like the calendar?
And one thing to say.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the calendar and rededicate October 12th as Indigenous Peoples' Day instead of Columbus Day.
I can second that.
Okay. Will the state be okay with that?
I guess. I specifically don't know the answer to that question. It's called Indigenous Peoples' Day in a lot of different places.
I know Chicago Public Schools do it.
Okay.
And you're bringing them up, not really.
I'm
We're also gonna be going to
not
school till
saying they're not
mid-July.
Let's not do that.
If everybody's,
I don't wanna do
if
that.
everybody's good with that, then we'll let them try that. Roll call.
Larson?
This is a vote on the
Yeah.
amendment.
This is voting on the
Yeah.
amended, yes.
It's changing its name?
Yes.
Oh, no, are we voting on that now?
No, I'm voting the calendar. I'm in favor of the calendar, yes.
Vote the calendar with that change.
Calendar
With that change.
With that change.
Okay,
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, yes.
all right.
You just gotta make sure when you throw too many things at me at once.
I know.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Giles, Hennessy,
Yes?
Keith,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Item 10, so item 11 is actually item 11.
3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Huh?
sure.
We're gonna, after this, we're gonna take a break.
Okay.
No,
All right.
just let it, I vote for you to go.
I
If
need
you
to-
have to go, you have to go. Don't need to-
I have 2 bottles of water, it's all right. I don't have to talk, but
Well, Lori will be back in a second, but in the interest of not reading this to you, this was just some observations I had, and I wanted to make a motion to propose that committee work adopt this type of flow as we move forward. So,
Maybe I misunderstood. It's time for discussion and not for action. We can,
Who's responsible for writing the committee summary report?
one of the committee members, I think the committees can figure out amongst themselves who wants to take that task. I don't think it has to be the same person each time necessarily either, but it would be committee work, and they could either delegate it to a committee member or work on it collectively before presenting to the board.
I believe this is in here, but I just wanna double check that we're still saying if a board member has a question, we still may ask.
Of course.
Okay, I just wanna double check that we're saying that in this.
This is really for the purposes of streamlining. I feel like we come to committee meetings and have a lot of the same discussion that we then come and have at the board, and I'm not saying that that's not valuable, but I think sometimes it's because the transition of what was discussed and answered and talked about doesn't make it to the board before you open up that information for discussion again. So in the interest of streamlining and not having the same discussion twice, I think this would be a more efficient way to translate what goes on in the committee to the full board and to the public, and might, mitigate some of the time that we spend rehashing things that we've already talked about in committee.
How is this gonna be reconciled with the vote we took last month to say no to the policy committee reviewing policies?
That's a good question.
Wish we would've had it in place before, it would've taken some of our questions away from what I had tonight.
I mean, we did vote last month, we turned down the motion to have the policy committee review policies, so. I don't know how that works.
I was gonna pull up the minutes of the other committees, but I think that we've had 3 this 19-20, sounds crazy to say 20 year, and we've had like 4 board members present at it. So if you're gonna function like that, why wouldn't you just have it go before the full board? Because to me, when you have a committee, the committee meets, they hear the input, and then the committee people talk. But there's been dialogue and discussion kind of with everybody. So I mean, if it's gonna be like a lot more people, then we should just have it go before the board. I mean, I know that you had a facilities meeting and you had quite a few people there too, so.
I guess I think the difference is that if a board member who's not on a committee can make a meeting, that's a little bit different than, I mean, you still have that transfer of knowledge for the people who weren't able to do that. So I think if we were to just say that committees go by the wayside and we have those in-depth discussions, especially surrounding the policy committee and what's coming at us, we're gonna have to strap on a Saturday morning for that, I think. I mean, there's a lot of detail coming out of that. And I think that the committees can work more effectively and efficiently than they have been. And this would be my proposal to attempt to reach that.
I'm okay with that.
And we might have to massage it as with anything, but it just feels to me, I'm with you, I don't like having the same conversations. It seems like there's a more effective and efficient way in use of people's time, and this might be a way to streamline that and and eliminate the need for all of that rehashing of things that have been discussed in the committee.
I actually was going to ask for this to be before we did the item 8.
Yeah, I think it's a good, I mean, I do process for a living, so this has been in my head for a while, and I just finally got it onto paper because I think the efficiency gains that we have here are pretty significant. And it's certainly a process and a procedure that we can adjust as we find its flow and how it works. And there may be some instances where we decide that it can skip a committee. I mean, for things that are really simple, like we did with the IASB, you know, there's no reason to talk through all of those individual policies necessarily. The committee could, for example, and since we're on the policy committee, I'll just use that as we've got this new IASB policies, we can say 12 of these were language changes. And so we are just going to recommend that as a committee, we vote for all of these except these other ones that we might want to call out and talk. And that's where the efficiency gains are going to come in terms of the committee.
Can the minutes of the committee meeting function as the summary report? I mean, essentially that's what we're doing, is summarizing.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but I think the minutes are important. I thought that this would be dedicated to pulling out the questions because poor Dawn, I mean, there are things that she can't catch. And so I think the committee would then help Dawn by saying, these were the actual questions that we grappled with and the discussion that took place surrounding those questions. And this is what we decided as a committee and why we're recommending it. And then the board can either follow that train of thought, and if they have something in addition, then we skip that, you know, that transition of knowledge and go right to the discussion. So in some cases, this report might be really small, and the minutes might be sufficient, but in the cases where you might have a bulkier meeting, then this is a way to clearly call out the discussion and decision-making points for the entire board.
Megan, what if with a two-person committee, if I would see this maybe coming up in policy committee more than the others, but the two board members disagree on what the recommendation should be for the board.
I think we make,
I'm not saying that. I'm
Oh,
just
sure.
saying
No,
that
it could definitely come up. I mean, I think with small committees that happens. So I think we would handle that like I suggested with the regular minutes, that we would outline the discussion and we would take an actual vote so that it's really clear, and then that person, each person could have an opportunity to put some context around why they voted a specific way.
So it comes, in that case, it would come to the board
As a split decision.
without a clear recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and then the whole board may have
I think had that been
discussion.
outlined, which this is good before, that's where I would have been, and it would have, so like this answers a lot of history for me, like kind of how I felt, you know, like, I'm not sure. But, so.
Yeah, I really like this framework. I think we should give it a try.
So is this gonna come as a policy proposal then next?
I mean, we could, I don't know that it needs to be that formal. I think it can just be the committee work. This is we agree that this is the way the product of the committee comes out.
If you ask me, this relates to our working guidelines that we were working on before.
Kind of, yeah, the documents.
Okay.
Thanks for your work on this.
Yeah, okay. Very good. All right. At this time, we've got another spot for communication for visitors. Do we have, Dawn, any more orange sheets people wish to address the board? We've got one, I think. Huh?
Max,
You want?
you can guess it on.
I can cancel it.
Yes.
All right. So at this point, a closed session is necessary tonight. For one, discussion of closed session minutes. Discussion minutes lawfully closed under the Act with purposes of approval or semi-annual review as mandated by section 2.06. We're also going to look at item number 10, the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters related to special education. And we'll look at number 11. Litigation where action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding should be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed session. And number 1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee to determine its validity. Normally, when we come back to closed session, we do not conduct business. Tonight, I can tell you, we will take action, I think, on one set of minutes when we come back to the closed session, because we're under the clock to get those done. Other than that, we don't anticipate any other action. Thank you for being here. We are, as our, I don't need a motion. We are on recess. Oh no, I do need a motion. Is there a motion to go to closed session for those reasons?
So moved. Second.
Is there a second? Further discussion, roll call vote.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Giles. Hendricks.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, I knew I needed something. All right, we're gonna take 10 minutes to clear the room, use the restroom.
I never printed a resolution for you.
I got it.
Absolutely.
It's not signed, but I got it, yeah.
We just need the one, because then we can make.
Okay. It's in here.
Oh, another one.
Activities includes, sports, clubs, it includes, just some activities like murals.
So,